What if the moon was not just a celestial body, but a sinister puppet master pulling strings in the shadowy theater of medieval medicine? What if every full moon sent doctors screaming into the night, not for the patients they swore to heal but to escape whispers of madness, disease, and death? Picture this, a world lit only by flickering torches, where every glance at the silver orb hanging in the sky ignited a primal fear, an ancient terror so profound that it eclipsed even the plague. With every lunar phase, medieval physicians scrambled for their lives. You'd think they were chasing ghosts, but they were running from something far worse, the chilling grip of superstition. Picture them, cloaked figures, huddled together in candlelit apothecaries, poring over grim tomes stained with the blood of past patients. They weren't just treating ailments, they were grappling with the cosmic forces that twisted their very understanding of health and illness. Their medical instruments. A mystical blend of herbs, leeches, and whispered incantations. Their bedside manner? A mix of fear and desperation, praying for the moon's mercy. Why the moon? To the medieval mind, it was a celestial juggernaut, a glowing harbinger of lunacy. Full moons drove people mad, literally. In the blink of an eye, the simple villager morphed into a howling beast, while the gallant knight succumbed to fits of rage. But was it the moon or the dread it incited that truly wrought chaos? With every waxing and waning, the stakes climbed higher, like a game of cosmic poker where the pot was life itself. Can't you feel the tension crackling? It's not just the moon, it's the relentless tide of fear washing over a society that couldn't afford to breathe easy. Doctors, those supposed harbingers of healing, found themselves trapped in a web of fear, caught between curing the sick and succumbing to the very madness they sought to banish. Each diagnosis wove a complex tapestry of astrology and medicine, was a fever caused by the miasma of the air or the ominous pull of the moon's gravitational dance. And what of the patients? Unwitting pawns in this cosmic chess game, they clung to their beliefs, terrified of the remedies that might save them or doom them. A splash of moonlit dew could be a cure or a curse. Each treatment was a gamble, each moonrise a roll of the dice. What if every laugh, every frantic scribble in a doctor's ledger, concealed a truth too terrifying to confront? In a time when astrology held as much weight as anatomy, the moon became the ultimate scapegoat, a celestial villain wrapped in an ethereal glow, casting shadows deeper than any medieval dungeon. Fear brews thick in the air, clinging like fog. The moon is rising. Can you hear the whispers? Can you feel the pull of the past? Enter if you dare, but remember, the night is dark, and the truth is as chilling as the light of the moon itself. The night was an abyss, thick with the weight of unspoken fears. Just above, the moon hung low, a silver spectre casting its mournful glow upon the earth, illuminating shadows that danced like restless spirits. I remember the chill in the air, sharp and invasive, crawling beneath my skin as I stood on the edge of a forgotten street, heart pounding, echoing the distant cries of a city that had lost its way. It was as if the cosmos conspired against us, aligning stars with a sinister precision, nudging fate towards an inevitable clash that felt both thrilling and terrifying. There was Naomi, her eyes wide and wild, flickering like candle flames in a tempest, fragile yet full of life. She clutched her sister's hand, knuckles white and trembling, the bond between them tighter than the world that threatened to tear them apart. I could see the shadows of their past flit across her face. I remember the way they once laughed, two kids on the rooftop, dreaming of the universe, unaware that the very stars they gazed upon were plotting their doom. "It's just a dream," she whispered, her voice a threadbare promise. But the air hummed with the electricity of unshed tears and a reality that felt like a frayed rope, ready to snap. And then there was Marcus, standing at the intersection of fear and resolve. He'd always been the brave one, or at least he tried to be. His hands dug into his pockets, fingers brushing against the cold metal of a keychain, an anchor to his past. I remember how he used to talk about constellations as if they were old friends, how he'd weave tales of adventure and cosmic wonders, a stark contrast to the battle brewing in his chest. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like lead, suffocating. "We have to go now," he urged, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. The stars were no longer guides, they were harbingers of chaos. The air crackled with tension, every heartbeat a drum echoing through the silence. I could feel it, the intangible thread woven between the three of us, an unholy alliance forged by the spectre of fate. Time twisted and stretched, moments elongating into eternity. The street, once a mundane stretch of asphalt, morphed into a battlefield, each crack and crevice a reminder of our fragility. The moon watched, a voyeur to our despair, as if it held the power to sway the hearts of men. Remember the night the comet passed? Naomi's voice broke through the suffocating silence, her thoughts spiraling back to innocence. We thought it was a sign. I remembered, too, the way we had danced beneath the cosmic fire, believing ourselves invincible, that the universe was on our side. How naive we were, how foolishly hopeful. But now, as the shadows encroached, the stars we once revered felt like sentinels of our sorrow, judging our every misstep. Marcus shook his head, a storm brewing behind his eyes. That was just a dream, N.A. He took a step forward, and the world shifted, an unseen force pulling at the edges of our reality. This is real. We're not children anymore. A single tear escaped Naomi's eye, glistening like a fallen star, and my heart splintered at the sight. I wanted to reach out, to tell her that dreams could still be real, that hope shimmered like stardust on the darkest nights. But the words died in my throat, caught in the web of despair. And then, the sky erupted. A thunderous roar, a celestial rebellion. The heavens cracked open, spilling their fury upon us, a downpour of cosmic rage. I staggered back, the world tilting as if the very axis of the universe had shifted. The stars blinked, and for a moment, everything was chaos, a whirlwind of light and sound, a cacophony of emotions erupting from the depths of my soul. Run! Marcus yelled, his voice slicing through the maelstrom. We stumbled forward, hearts racing, the ground trembling beneath our feet. I remember the laughter that felt like a ghost, haunting us as we sprinted through the shadows. The city was alive and screaming, a symphony of chaos punctuated by the howls of the wind. Every corner we turned felt like a descent into madness, the shadows elongating, warping as if they had minds of their own. The stars hung above us, indifferent, like a distant jury weighing our worth. Naomi fell, the gravel biting into her palms, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Help me," she cried, and I felt the ground shift beneath my heart. I looked back, every instinct screaming to save her, but Marcus grasped my arm, his grip iron tight. "We can't," he said, his voice a mix of anguish and determination. The moon witnessed our betrayal, its light turning cold and cruel as it illuminated the scene. "Please," Naomi's voice cracked, a haunting melody that sliced through the air. "I can't do this alone." The desperation in her eyes mirrored a universe of unfulfilled promises, and I felt the weight of her plea pressing against my chest. But the stars had chosen their path, and we were mere pawns in their celestial game. I remember the finality of that moment, the choice we had to make, the sacrifice we needed to bear. In the chaos, I glimpsed the stars aligning, a cosmic puzzle revealing their pieces. The universe was watching, and I felt small, insignificant against the vastness of it all. But in that fleeting moment, within the tempest of emotions, I realized the truth. Our lives were but fleeting moments, stitched together by the threads of our choices. As we ran from the shadows, I could feel the pull of something greater, an influence that transcended time and space, binding us to the celestial bodies above. And so we ran, hearts racing, shadows chasing, the weight of the cosmos pressing down upon our shoulders. The night was alive with the echo of our choices, a haunting reminder that the stars could light our way or lead us astray. As we dashed into the unknown, the moon continued its watch, a silent witness to our struggle, as we sought solace beneath a sky that held both our nightmares and our dreams. And the story twisted like the constellations above, spiraling into the infinite, leaving threads of emotion suspended in the air, fragile yet unbreakable, as we raced toward an uncertain fate, caught in the grip of celestial forces we could scarcely comprehend. The sky was a bruised canvas, clouds swirling like dark whispers as the old apothecary's door creaked open. Inside, a sweet, cloying scent of dried herbs and spices hung heavy in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of fear. I stood there, heart pounding, my palms slick against the wooden surface of the counter. The flickering candlelight danced in shadows, illuminating the anxious faces of those gathered, fearful villagers, desperate and clutching their sick children. There was a sense that time had splintered, broken into fragments of dread and hope, and the weight of the hour pressed down upon us all. I remember the way the stars blinked above, indifferent and cold. I remember the way Drusilla's eyes glimmered with unspoken terror, her hands trembling as she clutched a worn parchment scrawled with astrological symbols. In that moment, she was no longer merely a widow, mourning her husband lost to the plague's cruel embrace. She was a vessel of despair, a mirror reflecting the anguish rippling through the town. "The stars," she murmured, voice brittle as dried leaves. "They say the alignment is wrong, the moon is waning. It's like a death sentence." Was it her madness? Or were the heavens truly conspiring against us? I felt the chill creep into my bones, a creeping dread that whispered of fatality and fate. We were caught in a web spun of cosmic threads, and the once comforting belief in astrology now felt like a noose tightening around our throats. I had always scoffed at such notions, yet now, with the weight of sickness pressing down like a shroud, I found myself clutching to her every word, desperate to find meaning in the chaos. I observed Jacob, the town's healer, his brow furrowed as he peered into a battered tome, pages yellowed and crumbling, filled with the writings of long-dead scholars. He was a man of science and superstition, caught in a war of rational thought and the ethereal allure of the stars. Each time he flipped a page, I could see the shadows of doubt clouding his sharp features. "What if it's true?" he whispered, half to himself, half to the room. "What if our fates are written among the celestial bodies, dictated by forces we cannot comprehend?" The fire crackled, the embers swirling like ghostly orbs, and for a heartbeat, time felt suspended. I could see it in his eyes, the fear of failure, the weight of responsibility pressing down harder than the very air we breathed. How could he save us if the stars decreed otherwise? Would the herbs he gathered, the roots he ground, the potions he brewed, even matter? The thought hung heavy, a lead weight in the pit of my stomach. "Drusilla," I whispered, my voice trembling as I reached for her hand. "We must trust in him." But deep down, I felt the creeping shadows of doubt curl like smoke around my thoughts. What if trust was a fool's errand, a candle flickering against the oncoming storm? And then it came, a cry, a piercing wail that sliced through the tension like a blade. A child, pale as moonlight, lay convulsing on the floor, body racked with the fever that claimed so many before him. My heart raced, and I felt the room's collective breath hitch. The very air was thick with the stench of despair. The villagers' eyes darted toward Jacob, pleading and terrified, as if he alone held the keys to life and death. In that moment, I recalled the ancient stories, the warnings whispered in hushed tones by those who dared to speak of the stars. "The heavens do not forgive," they said. "They do not forget." I felt the cosmic weight of that truth settle upon my shoulders. I could almost hear the ticking of a celestial clock, counting down to some inevitable reckoning. Jacob knelt beside the child, hands trembling as he mixed herbs in a small bowl. His eyes flicked upward, as if pleading with the stars for guidance. "This should work," he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. But his gaze betrayed him, filled with uncertainty that clashed so violently with the urgency of the moment. That clash echoed within me, a deep, rattling discord that threatened to fracture the very fabric of our reality. And Drusilla, her face a mask of anguish, began to tremble, her heartstrings taut with fear and sorrow. "You must do something. The stars, they say it's written." Her voice fractured, a haunting melody of hopelessness reverberating in the air. I felt a wave of emotion crash over me, a tidal wave of desperation mingled with the chilling awareness that fate was a fickle mistress, one we could not hope to sway. Time slipped away like sand through our fingers, each grain a moment lost to the abyss of uncertainty. The candles flickered in tandem with our wavering faith, and I could almost hear the whisper of my own thoughts. What if astrology was a cruel joke played by an indifferent universe? What if our every effort was in vain? The child's breath hitched, a final gasp, and the room fell into a suffocating silence, the world outside forgotten. Drusilla's anguished wail shattered the air, a sound so primal that it clawed at the very fabric of my being. In that moment, I felt the walls closing in, shadows creeping closer as if the very night conspired to swallow us whole. Jacob's hands shook as he turned to face us, desperation etched into every line of his face. "I cannot fight the stars," he whispered, and the words hung heavy in the air, a haunting refrain that echoed through the gathering darkness. "But I will not let them decide our fate." As the night deepened, the walls of the apothecary trembled, and the world outside felt more distant than ever. We were trapped in our own cosmic storm, each breath a prayer, each heartbeat a plea for mercy. The stars above glimmered coldly, indifferent to our plight, as we stood on the precipice of something ancient and terrible, caught between the realms of medicine and belief, science and superstition. The flickering candlelight danced, shadows stretching like the hands of the clock, each tick a reminder that we were not alone. Time slipped, wove itself into the very fabric of our souls, binding us as we clung to the fragile thread of hope, however frayed it may be. And in that haunting twilight, we waited, hearts entwined with the cosmos, for whatever truth might unfold next, knowing that the stars, in all their cruel beauty, would not remain silent forever. The air hangs thick, pregnant with the weight of unspoken fears, a silence that screams just before the chaos. A flickering candle casts shadows across the stone walls, their dampness breathing secrets of a forgotten age. In that moment, I see Anselm, his fingers trembling as he clutches a prayer book, words blurring together like phantoms in the flickering light. A bead of sweat trickles down his brow, merging with a tear that trembles on the edge of his eyelid. "God is my witness," he whispers, voice heavy with desperation, if only he would hear me. For Anselm, the world is not just a place, it's a purgatory where sins linger like the stench of burnt offerings. Shadows swallow him whole, whispering doubts, am I good enough? Was I meant for this life, to toil endlessly beneath the weight of a cross too heavy to bear? Each prayer feels like a noose, each saint's name, a reminder of his own failings, spiraling him deeper into despair. His faith, once a beacon, now a flickering flame dancing on the edge of extinction. Across the chamber stands Eleanor, her heart a battlefield, torn between love and duty. With clenched fists and fiery defiance, she gazes at Anselm, her eyes glistening like the sharp edge of a dagger. "You believe in a God who is silent while the world burns," she challenges, her voice rising with the tension of a bowstring pulled taut. "What good is faith if it leaves us to rot in despair?" The intensity of her words pierces the air, each syllable a hammer striking the anvil of her conviction. She remembers the faces of the poor who perish in the streets, their bodies left to the crows. "I cannot stand idly by while he turns his back." But her passion is a double-edged sword, cutting deeply into her own heart. Eleanor often dreams of a different life, one where love and laughter drown out the cries of the dying. Yet, the weight of her station drags her back, an anchor to a ship sinking beneath the waves. She recalls fleeting nights of stolen kisses, hushed promises whispered in the dark. Yet those moments, intoxicating as they were, seem like shadows now, ghosts of a bliss she can no longer reach. And then, there's Cedric, lurking in the periphery, a figure cloaked in uncertainty. His heart races, not from courage but from the knowledge that he is a coward. He watches Eleanor and Anselm with an ache that gnaws at his insides, a quiet fury brewing like the storm clouds gathering outside, churning, roiling. He remembers the vows he made to himself, to protect, to stand firm. And yet, when the moment comes, he falters. The weight of their expectations crushes him, a boulder on his chest. "If only I could be brave," he mutters to himself, the words tasting bitter. The wind howls outside, a wild creature clawing at the shutters, rattling the glass. And with each gust, it howls their fears back at them. Cedric's breath quickens as he watches Eleanor's fiery spirit clash with Anselm's wavering faith. "You cannot change the world with screams," Anselm pleads, though his voice quakes with uncertainty. "You must kneel, not rage." But Eleanor, fierce and unyielding, shakes her head. "And what has kneeling ever done? Look where it has brought us. To this desolate place, where dreams wither like autumn leaves, where hope is but a flickering candle, ready to be snuffed out by the breath of the indifferent." Her words cling to the air, thick and heavy, as the shadows seem to lean closer, eager to lap up her despair. In that moment, something shifts in the room. Anselm's eyes narrow, a spark igniting within, the audacity of her words igniting a fire he thought long extinguished. "Then let us rise. Let us take that anger, that rage, and direct it toward those who turn their backs on suffering." And there it is, the tension crackles like lightning, the air tinged with anticipation. This is the moment they must choose their path, yet so much stands in their way. Cedric feels it too, the pulse of something greater, something terrifying stirring in the depths of his being. The clock chimes, each clang reverberating through the chamber, a countdown to the confrontation they dread yet crave. Each note echoes their fears, their desires, their crushed hopes. Time, that relentless tyrant, pushes them closer to the edge. It is not enough to speak, he finally says, voice trembling, we must act. But what if it costs us everything? A split second of silence hangs there, heavy and pregnant with meaning, before Eleanor breaks it, a fierce grin breaking across her face. Then let it cost us. What is life without a fight? Her laughter rings out, startling the shadows away, though they whisper back, teasing, reminding them of the dangers lurking just beyond the veil of their resolve. Outside, the sky darkens, thunder cracking like a whip, a storm ready to unleash its fury. They stand at the precipice of decision, each heartbeat an echo of humanity's desperate struggle against the indifferent universe. The medieval worldview, raw and unyielding, looms over them like a spectre, a reminder of their place in a world ruled by fate and fortune. Time slips through their fingers like grains of sand. Dreams clash and collide, hopes ignite and flicker, a battleground of the soul. What will they choose? The answers lie buried in the depths of their hearts, entwined with their sins, aspirations, and the haunting spectre of their own mortality. Each moment stretches, elongates, as they draw breath, poised on the knife's edge of destiny. The candlelight flickers, casting eerie shadows that dance like phantoms on the walls, mocking their indecision. The night is alive, charged with electricity, whispering secrets and fears that claw at their consciousness. It beckons them toward a confrontation that will cascade like a river, sweeping them into the depths of their realities. And as they stand there, together yet alone, the question hangs in the air, unanswered and unanswerable. What does it mean to truly live in a world where the divine seems distant, where suffering is a daily companion, and hope flickers like a dying ember? With their hearts pounding like war drums, they step forward. The shadows lean closer, the storm brews, and the medieval world waits, breathless, for the choice they are yet to make. The night was heavy, a thick blanket of darkness smothering the village. A flickering torch illuminated the faces of the frightened townsfolk, their eyes wide with fear, hearts pounding like war drums. At the center of the chaos stood Eliza, her breath hitching in her throat as she clutched the parchment, the words etched on it burning into her mind. Witchcraft! Heresy! The crowd's murmurs twisted into a cacophony, voices rising like a storm brewing on the horizon. She had to speak, to defend herself against the shadows creeping in. I remember the first time I felt the weight of belief, she whispered, her voice a fragile thread against the tide of accusation. The cold air held the scent of damp earth and the electricity of fear, the kind that clung to your skin and sank into your soul. I was just a girl, dreaming under the stars, wondering if God really watched over us. The flickering torchlight cast her face in sharp relief, illuminating the fierce resolve beneath her terror. Then there was Brother Thomas, caught in the moral crossfire of the church's demands and his own gnawing doubts. He stood apart, the hood of his robe drawn low, shadows cloaking his features. How many nights had he lain awake, wrestling with questions that rattled his very premise of faith? I remember the whispers of the ancients, the philosophers whose words danced like flames in my mind. They spoke of a God who was not just a distant ruler but an intimate companion, a friend, he thought, the conflict gnawing at him like a hungry wolf. But here I am, lost in the dogma, caught between piety and reason. Eliza's eyes found his, a spark igniting in the darkness. Brother Thomas, you must help me, she cried out, desperation lacing her voice like poison. You've studied the texts, you've read the philosophers. Can you not see that fear is the real enemy? The air thickened with tension, the crowd pressing closer, eager for blood, eager for a spectacle. Each heartbeat felt like a chant, a rhythmic echo of dread. But what if I have lost my way? Thomas thought, battling the specters of doubt that clung to him like cobwebs. What if I am just as lost as they believe her to be? The dance of faith and fear played out in his mind, an intricate ballet of morality that left him breathless. And then there was the old clock tower, its rusted gears creaking like the groans of the damned. Time passed, yet here they stood, suspended in this moment. The clock struck, reverberating through the night, each chime a reminder of their mortality, of the fleeting nature of belief. Tick-tock, tick-tock, it whispered, as if mocking their struggles, every second brings you closer to judgment. I remember my mother's laughter. Eliza's voice cut through the tension, raw and aching. She told me stories of the saints, their struggles, their triumphs. I believed in their goodness. But what goodness is there now when the darkness creeps in? Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspent emotion, a desperate plea for understanding in a world that had grown so cold. The villagers, shadows in the flickering light, exchanged glances. Doubt and fear collided, a storm brewing within their hearts. What if they were wrong? What if Eliza was no witch but a beacon of light in their suffocating darkness? But the weight of tradition bore down upon them, a suffocating shroud. We are told to trust in the church, to believe in the divine order, one voice called out, shaky yet resolute. What if the philosophers are right? What if reason leads us astray? The words ricocheted in the air, a haunting echo of an uncertain faith that had been buried under centuries of dogma. A flicker of hope ignited in Thomas's heart. What if, Eliza, we challenge the very foundations of our beliefs, he found himself saying, the words tumbling out as if they had been waiting for this moment. What if we dare to question the dogmas that bind us? Is not the pursuit of truth a holy endeavor? Eliza's eye sparkled with a glimmer of defiance. I would rather face the flames than live a life shackled by ignorance, she declared, her spirit rising like a phoenix from the ashes of despair. What is faith if it is not tested? What is belief if it does not burn with passion? But the crowd surged forward, a relentless tide of fear and fury, their faces twisted by the shadows of a creed they had clung to for so long. Heretic! Witch, they cried, voices rising like the roar of a tempest. The intensity of their fear fed the frenzy, a dangerous cocktail of misplaced righteousness and unyielding faith. Brother Thomas felt the ground tremble beneath him, the clash of hearts and minds echoing in the marrow of his bones. I remember the moment I chose to believe, he thought, the realization crashing down on him like a wave. But now, I stand here, watching as faith morphs into fanaticism, and I am paralyzed by the truth that I must face. Eliza's heart raced, each beat a drumroll of impending doom. She could feel the noose tightening around her, the weight of judgment pressing down like a stone. But in that moment, she also felt the flicker of rebellion. It is in our questioning that we find our truth, she shouted, a battle cry that resonated in the night, a beacon of defiance against the gathering storm. The clock chimed again, each reverberation echoing through the chaos. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Time was slipping away, and with it, the chance to reshape their beliefs, to redefine their existence in a world that seemed determined to crush them under the weight of its own darkness. As the villagers closed in, their eyes wild with fear and fervor, Eliza and Thomas stood on the precipice of something monumental. The air crackled with tension, the promise of confrontation looming like a specter. What will it take to ignite the fires of doubt and reason in their hearts? Thomas pondered, the shadows of doubt creeping closer. And as the night deepened, a ghost of a smile flickered across Eliza's lips, a spark of hope amidst the terror. Together, we can challenge the cosmos, we can rewrite the stories that bind us. We can be the architects of our own beliefs. The words hung in the air, vibrant with possibility, igniting a flicker of rebellion in the hearts of those who listened. The ancient dance between faith and reason continued beneath the shroud of night, a reminder that in the depths of despair, the seeds of revolution could bloom. As the storm gathered, they became the living embodiment of the struggle that had shaped the very fabric of existence, a testament to the relentless pursuit of truth, forever intertwined with the shadows of their beliefs. The moon hung low, swollen and pale, a ghostly sentinel draped in the inky shroud of night, illuminating the damp cobblestones of the village square. Lurking shadows coiled around the feet of the townspeople, whispering secrets of dread and disease. I could hear it, the distant wail of a child, echoing through the darkened alleys, drenching the air with a sense of urgency that felt like a tightening noose. Eleanor, a healer cursed with the gift of foresight, stood at the edge of the firelight, her fingers trembling as she clutched a handful of herbs. The moonlight caught her striking features, illuminating the lines of worry etched into her brow. "It's the fever, it's coming for us," she muttered, her voice strained, barely breaking through the stillness. The weight of her knowledge that twisted her stomach into knots, was a burden she bore alone. Every pulse of the moon seemed to throb within her, a rhythmic reminder of her own haunted past, of the night everything shifted in her world. Then there was Thomas, the apothecary's son, his heart a boiling cauldron of despair. He rushed toward Eleanor, desperation painted across his face. "Have you seen my sister?" he breathed, urgency clawing at his throat. She had been taken by the fever, a wretched illness that had swept through their village like a vengeful spectre. He had watched her fade, each breath a silent plea for help. "The moon, it calls to me," he whispered, as if confessing to a sin that lay in the shadows. "I feel it pulling her away. Do you think it can save us?" The moon, that pale, cruel mistress, had long been woven into the fabric of their lives. It dictated the rhythms of planting and harvesting, a celestial clock that swung ominously overhead. But for Eleanor and Thomas, it became a monstrous figure that loomed larger than life, a symbol of everything they feared. The moon's phases dictated the tides of the human body, the ebb and flow of sickness and health, it was believed to govern their very souls. And yet, as Thomas felt the weight of the moon resting heavy on his chest, he questioned its purpose. "Does it watch us suffer? Does it revel in our torment?" "Not all things are as they seem," Eleanor replied, her voice trembling with the fragility of hope. "The moon is a mirror, Thomas. It reflects our pain, but it also harbors our salvation." But her words felt hollow, a thin veil of comfort over a chasm of despair. She remembered the tales, the old wives' wisdom of how to cure the sick, how the right alignment of the stars could mend broken bones and banish dark spirits. But nothing could mend Thomas's heart, nothing could bring back the light that flickered out in his sister's eyes. The villagers gathered, their faces drawn tight with fear, like ghosts trapped in the light of the burning pyre. No one dared to question the old superstitions, no one dared to face the truth that the fever was a fury unleashed by the moon itself. As they clung to their beliefs, Eleanor felt a swelling tide of anger rise within her. "Why do we allow the moon to dictate our fates?" she shouted, her voice a raw edge cutting through the murmur of despair. "We are not mere puppets to its strings." But the moon simply watched, indifferent and cold, as if judging their every word, every action. It felt like a betrayal that twisted her stomach. She had spent years gathering the remedies, learning the art of healing, yet here they stood, powerless, while the moon cast its spell over them, a deity demanding sacrifice. "Do you think it cares?" she whispered, more to herself than to Thomas. "Do you think it mourns for the lives we lose?" His eyes searched hers, filled with a haunted longing. "But what if it holds the key?" Thomas had heard the stories, the whispers of the old women who spoke of the lunar tides as a way to harness healing. It said that when the moon is full, a tincture can be made from the leaves of the nightshade, that it can lift the fever, if we just believe. And there it was, a spark of hope flickering in the darkest of nights. The moonlight poured around them, mingling with their breath, illuminating the path to a desperate plan. "Your sister," Eleanor breathed, entranced by the notion, "will gather what we need under the light of the full moon. We'll defy its wrath, harness its power." But the fear remained, a gnawing presence. "What if we fail?" Thomas's voice trembled, the very essence of his soul hanging in the balance. "What if it all goes wrong?" "I remember the night my mother took the moon's blessing," she murmured, her eyes distant, caught in a memory like a moth in a web. She stood in the clearing, arms raised, her breath mingling with the stars, and she spoke to the night. She believed it would save us, and it did. He nodded, the moonlight washing over his face, illuminating the scars of his grief. "Then we shall do the same." As they stood together, the shadows loomed heavy, the villagers' hopes resting precariously on their shoulders. The moon bore down like a watchful guardian, a harbinger of fate. The night stretched before them, a tangled web of uncertainties, but with each heartbeat, the pulse of possibility thrummed louder. Their plan grew, woven from desperation and determination, entwined with the very essence of the moon itself. But even as the silver light bathed them, doubts crept in like serpents, whispering fears of failure, of loss. Would the moon smile upon them, or would it turn its gaze, leaving them to dance with despair? They began to gather, hands trembling with anticipation, hearts racing against the encroaching darkness. Each step felt like a leap into the void, every breath a silent prayer to the indifferent moon. The air thickened with the weight of what lay ahead, hope and fear, intertwined in an unholy dance. And there they stood, two souls united by anguish, by the looming shadow of the moon, ready to confront the unfathomable, a ritual born from desperation, a battle against the inevitable tide of mortality. The moon shone on, and in its pale light, they ventured forth, hearts pounding, fear and courage locked in an eternal struggle. The clock struck midnight, and the world exhaled a breath it didn't know it was holding. Shadows danced in the corners of the dim-lit room, where Sarah sat hunched over her kitchen table, scribbling feverishly. She could hear the rustle of leaves outside, whispering secrets on the wind, secrets that chilled her bones and quickened her pulse. It was the night of the full moon, and with it, the air crackled with a tension that made her skin prickle. She remembered, oh, how vividly she remembered, her grandmother, wild-eyed and trembling, warned her that the moon had its way of drawing out the darkness in people. Sleep with one eye open, she would say, for the moon knows your fears. Across town, David paced the sterile hall of the hospital, the fluorescent lights flickering like dying stars. Each step echoed with the weight of unspoken dread, the weight of illness, of lives suspended between hope and despair. The full moon was notorious here, with it, the emergency room bloomed like a morbid flower. It's the lunar effect, the nurses whispered, their voices laced with a mix of disbelief and resignation. More accidents, more heart attacks, more everything. He couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just coincidence. He could feel the pulse of the moon in his veins, a rhythmic thump that matched the frantic beat of his heart. Then there was Emily, her laughter echoing through the cracked walls of her father's modest home. But beneath the surface of her cheer lay a darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. She had just returned from the doctor's office, each word heavy with a finality that made her stomach churn. It's nothing to worry about, the doctor had said, but she could see it in his eyes, the worry he tried to mask with professional detachment. Her cycles had gone awry, pulled out of sync like a compass spinning wildly. Hormones, they said, stress. But she felt the moon's pull, the way it seemed to tug at her very core, unraveling her inside like a tightly wound ball of yarn. Sarah's pen scratched the paper, her thoughts racing. She was knee-deep in research, digging into the historical whispers of lunar influence on the human psyche. I remember, she muttered, the tales of lunacy, how the ancients believed the moon could send a person spiraling into madness. It was all connected, a web of belief that transcended centuries, an ancient fear that time had not erased. Each full moon, she felt it, the way it loomed large and ominous, as if it were a harbinger of chaos. She couldn't shake the image of her grandmother, the way she would peer out the window into the night, haunted by memories of bygone whispers. David's world was a blur, the hum of machinery merging with the rhythmic beeping of monitors, a chorus of imperfections that seemed to crescendo with the moon's ascent. Another one, the nurse said, her voice clipped, as they wheeled in a patient whose breaths came in frantic gasps. David's heart raced as he fought against the tide of fear, locking eyes with the stranger, all vulnerability laid bare. "Stay with me," he urged, his voice low but steady. "You're going to be okay." But deep down, he knew the moon was not a healer, it was a trickster weaving its spell, pulling at hearts and souls, reshaping lives with every waning phase. Emily felt it too, the weight of the moon pressing down on her chest as she stood before the mirror, a spectre of herself. She remembered the night spent unraveling in tears, the shadows creeping in as she lay awake, thoughts spiraling like autumn leaves caught in a violent storm. "Why now?" she whispered, clutching the edge of the sink as if it could ground her. The world felt distant, a cruel joke played by fate, and her laughter faded into echoes of desperation. "What's wrong with me?" she cried out to the empty room, the moon's chill seeping into her bones, each beam a reminder of her fragility. Sarah's words flowed like a river, each line a heartbeat that resonated with the urgency of her quest. Lunar cycles, she scribbled, affect mood, behavior, health. Full moons spark manic episodes, new moons draw in reflection. She felt the weight of the ages pressing upon her, the collective fears of humanity swirling in the ink of her thoughts. Was it mere superstition, or was there something ancient buried within the psyche of mankind? She felt a fire igniting within her, a determination to weave her grandmother's warnings into a tapestry of understanding, each thread pulled tight with the weight of emotion. The night grew deeper, the moon hanging low like a sentinel, watching over Sarah, David, and Emily as their lives intertwined in a dance of fate. The air thickened with tension, an electric pulse that surged through the city, binding them together in a web of shared experiences. Each of them, flawed yet fiercely human, sought answers in the moonlit shadows, their hearts beating in sync with the celestial cycle that governed their lives. As the clock ticked closer to dawn, Sarah felt a surge of clarity wash over her. The moon, she whispered, is a mirror reflecting our inner turmoil. With every cycle, stories of joy and heartbreak, of health and disease, unfurled like petals, raw and unfiltered. She remembered the times her own body felt like a battleground, the echoes of her grandmother's warnings wrapping around her like chains. Each cycle, a reminder that life ebbed and flowed, intertwined with the celestial dance above. David, wiping sweat from his brow, stood at the precipice of despair and hope. The chaos of the night bled into the promise of dawn, yet he felt the pulse of the moon thrumming in his veins, reminding him that every heart beating in tandem with the moon cycle carried its own weight. He remembered the patients he couldn't save, the ones lost to the dark pull of the night. Would he one day be one of them, swallowed whole by the lunar tide? And Emily, standing in the silence of her father's home, felt the moon's gaze upon her, a haunting reminder that she was not alone in her struggle. She remembered the joy that once filled her life, how laughter seemed to flow freely like water. Now, the moon was both a companion and a spectre, haunting her with visions of what was lost. She longed to reclaim her joy, to defy the shadows that loomed large and relentless. As the first light of dawn crept into the sky, the pulse of the moon began to wane, but the echoes of its influence lingered, a haunting reminder that every cycle held a story to tell. And as the three of them stood on the precipice of change, their lives forever altered by the lunar dance above, they felt the weight of their choices, their emotions entwined like the very phases of the moon itself. The crisis lingered, the tension palpable, and the night was all but a memory that would shape their futures in ways they could never imagine. The journey was far from over, it was merely a beginning. The moon hung low that night, a silver coin tossed into a dark, velvet sea, casting its ghostly glow upon the narrow, cobbled streets of the ancient town. The air was thick with tension, crackling like static before a storm. I stood at the threshold of the dimly lit clinic, its worn wooden door creaking ominously as though warning me against what lay within. My heart raced, each beat a reminder of the urgency that pulled me like gravity toward the sick and the suffering. I could hear the whispers, soft, desperate, filled with pain. "Juliet," a voice called from the shadows. It was Oliver, his eyes wide and wild, the weight of his pleading gaze almost unbearable. He was the kind of man who could light up a room, but tonight, he was dimmed, almost flickering. "We need you." I felt the cold grip of dread coil around my throat. I remembered too well the tales my grandmother told, the old wives' lore that spoke of the moon's power over life and death. The full moon was a time of madness, she said, when the boundaries between worlds blurred and the spirits of the past danced on the edge of reality. "It's just superstition," I'd scoffed, but deep down, fear whispered otherwise. Tonight, the emergency room was a maelstrom of chaos. Patients lay on gurneys, their faces pallid and drawn, eyes reflecting the spectral light of the moon. I could smell the coppery tinge of blood mingling with antiseptic, a scent that clawed at my insides and reminded me of every life I'd tried to save and every death I couldn't bear to witness. I gripped my stethoscope tighter, a lifeline in a world spiraling into darkness. "Oliver, what happened?" I asked, forcing the words past my clenched teeth. "Severe cases of hemorrhaging. It's the lunar phase." He spoke with a fervor that bordered on desperation, a fragile edge that made me believe for a moment that he was right. "It's happening more often now, with every full moon. The blood, it just won't stop flowing." His hands trembled, and I wanted to reach out, to steady him, but I couldn't. The weight of my own doubt anchored me in place. As I stepped further inside, the flickering lights overhead cast shadows that twisted and turned like phantoms. I could feel their cold breath on my neck, a reminder that something ancient and unfathomable thrummed beneath the surface of our modern understanding. I remembered the stories of the blood moon, the victims of its curse. "Juliet!" A voice pierced through the haze, raw and urgent. It was Sarah, a nurse, her face streaked with tears, framed by the stark light. "There's no one else. We need your help." And just like that, I was lost in the whirlpool of emotions, drawn into the vortex of the clinic, where hope and despair collided in a cacophony of human suffering. Each heart monitor beeped like a ticking clock, counting down to unknown endings, as I rushed from bed to bed. I could hear the whispers again, this time louder, more insistent. "Help us! Help us!" Their voices interwove, a chorus of despair. I tried to focus, to block out the noise, but it seeped in like poison. I pulled back memories of long nights spent studying anatomy, of textbooks filled with diagrams and cold, hard facts, yet none of that prepared me for this visceral reality. "Please, you have to save him," a mother wailed nearby, cradling her child, a fragile thing, pale and still. The moonlight caught the glistening tears streaming down her cheeks, each drop a tiny universe of grief. My heart shattered for her, for me, for all of us caught in this web of despair. I knelt beside them, the sterile scent of the clinic mixing with the sweet smell of innocence. "I will do everything I can," I promised, though I knew the words were hollow, a fragile lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, an echo of time folding in on itself, moments stretching and contracting like the breath of the cosmos. I glanced at Oliver, who stood at the entrance, his hands tightening into fists, the tension in his body a reflection of my own. We were warriors in a fight we didn't fully understand, battling against forces that felt bigger than us. "Juliet, please," he murmured, his voice hoarse, urgent. "The lunar phases, they affect us all. They bring out the darkness in people." His words clung to me, heavy like chains. Did he really believe that? Could the moon's pull twist our fates, warp our very essence? I wanted to tell him he was wrong, but the evidence lay before me, wrapped in sheets and shadows. I could see it in the erratic heartbeats, the rising panic, the blood pooling on the floor, each droplet a testament to something ancient and cruel. "Stay close," I ordered Oliver, my voice shaky but resolute. We moved together, a pair of souls tethered by the weight of our shared resolve. I felt his warmth beside me, a flicker of light in the encroaching dark. We were both flawed, both struggling with our own demons, but in this moment, we were united by purpose, by the thin thread that tethered us to life. As the night wore on, more patients trickled in, each one carrying their own burden of pain, their own history of loss. The air thickened with despair and the scent of mortality. I caught glimpses of the moon through the windows, its light penetrating our sanctuary, taunting us with its beauty when all around was chaos. The room pulsated with urgency, each heartbeat a reminder that life hung by a thread. And then, a scream. A sound so primal it pierced the very fabric of the clinic, freezing me in place. I turned to see a figure, wild-eyed and blooded, lurching through the doorway. The moonlight illuminated her face, and in that moment, I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "Help me," she cried, and the plea echoed through the room, wrapping around each of us like a shroud. Instinct kicked in. I rushed toward her, but as I did, the world began to blur, and I understood. The moon's light did not just illuminate, it revealed. It revealed our fears, our vulnerabilities, and the darkness we each carried inside. I looked around, the faces of the patients twisted with terror, and I realized we were all caught in the same web. We were not just fighting for their lives, we were fighting for our own. "Get her on the table," I shouted, the urgency in my voice slicing through the haze. But I could feel the tension crackle, the very air heavy with unspoken words, choking us all. And in that moment, as I gripped the edge of the gurney, I understood. The struggle was not just against illness or injury, it was against the shadows lurking just outside, the phantoms waiting for the moonlight to cast their spell. "Juliet," Oliver's voice cut through the chaos. "We can't let the moon win." And somehow, in our shared conviction, we gripped onto each other in the face of the darkness, desperately trying to pull one another back, to hold on against the tide of despair rising around us. The room was a battleground, and we were soldiers, fighting against something both ancient and fearsome, something we couldn't quite name but felt in the marrow of our bones. The moon glared down at us, indifferent and cold, as if waiting, watching for the moment when we would falter. Each breath felt heavy with the weight of unspoken fears, each heartbeat a reminder that the night was far from over. "Stay with me," I whispered, both to myself and to Oliver, as I met his gaze, a shared strength igniting between us. And in that moment of connection, I felt the pulse of the universe, the heartbeat of existence, thrum beneath our feet, a reminder that even in the darkest of nights, we still had each other, still had hope. Together, we faced the shadows, bracing ourselves against the pull of the moon, ready to fight for every last breath, every flicker of life that struggled to endure in the face of the unknown. The night was thick with tension, but we were alive, and that was the only certainty we needed. And so we stood, amidst the chaos, hearts racing, breaths mingling with desperation. The moon watched on, a silent witness, as we plunged into the abyss, refusing to be consumed by the darkness. The moon hung heavy in the sky, a silver coin tossed into the abyss of night. Beneath its watchful gaze, a figure writhed on a rickety table, blood pooling like dark ink around him. Its metallic scent mingled with the musty air of the dimly lit room, and the flicker of a single candle danced wildly, casting shadows that seemed to mock the scene unfolding. The doctor, a gaunt man with sunken eyes, gripped a jagged blade, as uncertainty rippled through his fingers. He didn't just operate on bodies, he operated on fates, charting destinies like a sailor navigating stormy seas by the pull of the moon. I remember the night my brother Thomas lay there, his breath quick, shallow. The moon was full, a beacon of chaos. It was said that when the moon was bright, the blood flowed faster, softer, and the spirits of the ancients whispered through the darkened air. "It must be done tonight," the doctor muttered, the scent of fear on his breath. I wanted to scream, to claw back the night and bury us both in its darkness where no blade could reach him. But I could only watch, paralyzed by dread and love. "Cut deeper," Thomas gasped, his voice barely a whisper. He was always the brave one, the one who sought out adventure like a moth to a flame. This time, his bravery felt like madness, a desperation that clawed at the walls of my heart. I remember thinking of the moon's cruel smile, how it mocked us from above, indifferent to our pain. It had seen more anguish than I could fathom, more blood than even this world could comprehend. And then there was Eleanor, our neighbor, a woman both fierce and fragile, swirling with contradictions. Her skin glowed like alabaster, but there were shadows in her eyes. She believed in the old ways, the whispers of the past that guided her hands as she prepared poultices and tinctures, each one carefully chosen during the waxing and waning of the moon. She often told me, the moon is a clock, ticking away lives with every cycle. I always found it absurd, and yet, that night, as I watched the doctor's blade plunge into Thomas' flesh, I grasped her truth. The clock was ticking, and the moon was its cruel keeper. "Hold him still," the doctor barked, but how could I? Each quiver of my brother's body reverberated through me, a symphony of agony that drew tears from my eyes. The moon, that wretched orb in the sky, watched us with glacial indifference. I remember feeling dizzy, the edges of my vision blurring, the candle flame flickering as though it too were caught in the throes of our anguish. Would it ever end? Eleanor stood at the threshold, her breath hitching as she pressed a cloth to her mouth, stifling a scream. "The blood must flow with the moon," she said, her voice a haunting echo. "The tides must be right. You can't fight it." But I was fighting, oh, how I was fighting. I remembered our childhood, how Thomas laughed at the absurdity of our village rituals, how they bathed once a year, and romance felt earthy and wild, like the roots of the trees that surrounded us. Yet here we were, bound by tradition, caught in the snare of an ancient belief that the moon dictated life and death. The blade carved, and the blood spilled, each drop felt like a heartbeat lost. I could feel the rhythm of his life fading, slipping away with each lunar pull. "You'll be okay," I shouted, though I didn't believe it. Uncertain hope twisted inside me, a vine wrapped tight around my heart, choking me with its grip. "You'll see the next full moon." The doctor paused, wiping sweat from his brow, his eyes darting toward Eleanor, who seemed to sway with the shadows. "It's too late," he muttered, an echo of despair. And then, the air thickened, pregnant with the weight of unspoken truths. I could see the moon creeping closer, as if it were a voyeur to our desperation. It cast long fingers of silver light into the room, reaching for Thomas, caressing his pale face. Then, the shadows shifted, and Eleanor stepped forward, her demeanor transforming from fear to fierce determination. "You don't understand the moon," she said to the doctor, her voice low and steady. "It's not just a cycle, it's a promise. We can harness its power." She moved closer to the table, the candlelight flickering over her features, illuminating a fierce resolve that both terrified and inspired me. "They laughed at us for believing, for clinging to the past," she continued. "But look where it brought us. The moon doesn't just take, it gives. We can draw on its strength." She reached out, grasping the doctor's wrist, her fingers steady as the tide. "Let us be part of the cycle. We'll bring him back." The atmosphere crackled with tension, and my heart raced as I watched the two of them, their destinies entwined like the roots of an ancient tree. I wanted to scream, to shout at the futility of it all. But then a spark of hope ignited, a flicker of the impossible. Could the moon truly be our ally? Could it breathe life into the bleeding flesh of my brother? Every full moon, the spirits surge, Eleanor said, almost in a trance. They can be called upon, but we must be willing to pay the price. "Price," the doctor echoed, glancing between us, uncertain. I felt my breath hitch. What price? Was it the life of another? The moon seemed to shimmer in response, casting a ghostly glow around us, whispering secrets that danced on the edges of thought. "Let us try," Eleanor urged, desperation and faith intertwining in her voice. Thomas' breaths were shallow, each one felt like the last. The moon loomed larger, a cosmic giant, and for a moment, I felt its pull, its promise, life, death, rebirth. And just when I thought I couldn't bear the weight of it all, I took a step closer, joining Eleanor and the doctor in the moonlight, trembling, alive with the fear and thrill of what lay ahead. The night had not yet finished with us. It stretched out, infinite and dark, cradling our hopes and fears in its vast embrace. And in that moment, I realized, the moon did not just watch, it witnessed our struggle, our humanity, our raw, bleeding hearts. It was a clock, yes, but more than that, more than mere cycles. It was a spectre of what could be, and I clung to the thought as the shadows deepened. The moon hung low, a porcelain disc smeared with crimson as if it had bled into the night. I stood there, breathless, heart racing, the shadows clutching at my ankles. They said the full moon could awaken the restless dead, and tonight, I felt it, toying with my sanity, pulling at the frayed edges of my soul. My fingers grazed the soft earth, damp with unease, and the air crackled with a tension I could taste. It was the kind of night where folklore wrapped around your heart like a vice, squeezing until you believed. Mara darted past me, her eyes wild, skin glistening with a sheen that wasn't just sweat. "They're coming! They're coming," she gasped, the words tumbling out in a frantic rhythm, echoing the panic that danced in her chest. Mara had always danced on the fringes of reality, a dreamer in a world far too cruel for her fragile spirit. But tonight, she was a seer, tapping into the primal fear that thrummed through our village. The old tales whispered in every corner, "Beware the moon's shadow, for it feeds on the lost." Then there was Tomos, standing defiantly against the backdrop of the moonlit woods, his silhouette a stark reminder of the man I once loved. His voice cut through the darkness, low and steady. "You need to stop this, Mara. It's just superstition." But we both knew the truth was twisted into the legends, a gnarled root that strangled any semblance of reason. Tomos wore skepticism like armor, but I could see the tremor in his hands, the way he clenched his fists as he faced the unseen terror. The moon made fools of us all, and it didn't matter how much you pretended. "I remember the stories," I whispered, words escaping like a ghost, "the ones our mothers told us as children. About the moon calling the wolves, about the lost souls that roam the night." Each syllable dripped with the weight of memories, pulling me deeper into the shadows of my own fears. I could still see my mother's face, carved in the silver light, warning me to keep away from the woods when the moon hung heavy. The laughter of long-gone friends echoed in my mind, drowned now by the dread curling in my stomach. Mara's eyes widened, catching that fear. The old woman said they would come for us when the blood moon rose. And look, she pointed, trembling fingers quivering like leaves in a storm. The moon glared down, a witness, a judge. They want our souls. Tomos stepped closer to me, his breath warm against my ear. Don't listen to her. We can't let fear dictate our lives. But the way he said it, his voice shook, an echo of the child he used to be, the child who believed in the magic of the stories, before life choked the wonder out of him. I could feel the pain of his disbelief, the jagged line between us growing thicker with every moment the moon bore witness to our unraveling. I remember, I said, my voice a low hum, my father's warnings about the moon's curse. How it could steal your dreams and twist them into nightmares. Each heartbeat was a reminder, a thudding call to arms against the darkness that threatened to swallow us whole. What if tonight is the night it happens? Mara clutched her arms around herself, shivering, as if the ghosts of the past had wrapped their cold fingers around her throat. We can't stay here. We have to run. Her desperation poured into the earth beneath us, a plea that resonated with the wild beating of my own heart. The stories came flooding back, the folklore swirling like leaves caught in a gale, tales of lovers lost to the moon's madness, of the howling winds that carried their cries into the night. I remember, I breathed, the words soaked in heartbreak. The legends of the moonlit dance, where the chosen would waltz with shadows until dawn. The air thickened with the weight of my confession. The moon could twist joy into sorrow, and the thought of being chosen haunted me. It always had. We were the watchers, the ones who held the stories close, but now we were face to face with our own reckoning. Suddenly, a rustle in the trees snapped our attention. An ominous whisper, a breath of wind that felt like a warning, sent shivers cascading down my spine. They're here, I gasped, and the fear ignited into a wildfire. The shadows of the forest seemed to dance, mocking us, and the moon shone brighter, exposing the truth we tried to deny. Stay together! Tomos shouted, but his voice faltered, trembling against the mounting dread. I felt the pull of the moon, an invisible thread trying to snare us, to drag us into the depths of the unknown. The old folklore we once laughed at now draped over us like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. Mara's breath quickened, her fragile spirit cracking under the weight of the night. What if they're watching us? What if they're waiting? Her words were a fevered chant, spiraling into an abyss of fear. I wanted to reach out, to tell her that everything would be okay, but my own heart echoed with doubt. And then it happened, a howl, guttural and raw, slicing through the silence like a knife. The sound ricocheted in the stillness, layering another thread of terror across our trembling forms. I could feel it in my bones, the moon was awakening something primal, something ancient, in the depths of the woods. I remember, I said, longing to cling to the thread of hope that the legends tell of the brave. Those who confront the shadows dance among them. But there was no bravery in my heart, only fear, twisting and clawing. Tomos stepped forward. We face this together, he declared, but even as he spoke, I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes, the realization that the moon's grip was tightening. We were not simply battling legends, we were fighting the weight of our own fears, the shadows of our hearts. The moon loomed above, a relentless sentinel, and the night felt alive, pulsing with the energy of the stories that wrapped around us like a noose. Its glow spilled over the land, illuminating the darkness. It was here, in this moment, we stood at the precipice of belief and disbelief, facing whatever horrors the night had in store. I could feel the electric pull of the moon, weaving through our fears, drawing us closer to the brink of something we couldn't understand. The stories whispered in our ears, urging us to remember, to confront, and to face the shadows that lingered just beyond the reach of the light. And as the howl echoed again, this time so close, we knew there was no turning back. The superstitions of the past were not mere tales. They were our fate, and in this moment, the moon demanded our surrender. The moon hung low that night, a ghostly spectre casting silvery shadows across the damp earth. I stood outside, frozen, the air thick with unsaid words, the scent of impending rain mingling with something more primal, more alive. My heartbeat synced with the distant rumble of thunder, an echo of old fears, fears handed down like heirlooms. They say the moon affects us, that it pulls at the tides of our very souls, but on this night, it felt as if it beckoned something darker. I remember Sarah, her eyes wide, reflecting that pale glow. "Do you feel it?" she whispered, voice trembling, caught somewhere between wonder and terror. She had always been my lighthouse, grounding me against the raging storms of myth and lore, yet tonight, she seemed more lost than ever. The myths danced between us like shadows, werewolves, lunatics, madness rising with the moon. I could see the doubt swimming in her gaze, as if the weight of centuries hung over her, clawing at her sanity. I wanted to tell her it was just stories, just folklore spun from the wet, tangled dreams of our ancestors. But my words felt as insubstantial as the mist swirling around our feet. I remember how it had started, the way we had been. Late-night conversations tangled in laughter, the absurdity of it all, how we could dismiss the worries of the world, how we could argue over whether the moon made the tides rise or if it merely reflected the chaos within ourselves. But there was Ryan, standing off to the side, his face shadowed, arms crossed tightly over his chest. He was the skeptic, the rationalist, and yet I could see it in his clenched jaw, the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The moon's glow had turned him pale, as if it stripped away the armor of reason he wore like a second skin. "It's all just coincidence," he had said once, his voice a fierce whisper, an old wives' tale. I wanted to believe him, to believe that we were immune to the pull of those distant celestial bodies. But something deep within me, something raw and ancient, screamed otherwise. As we stood there, the echoes of our fears ricocheted off the walls of the night, timid whispers mingling with the rustling of leaves. I felt it, the weight of the moon's gaze, heavy, insistent. Was it madness that coursed through the veins of the lunatic? Or was it something far more sinister, far more real? I could feel Sarah's breath hitch beside me, and I turned to see her gripping the fabric of her shirt, as if it could shield her from something creeping up from the depths of the unknown. "Come on," I urged, breaking the eerie silence, my voice trembling with urgency. "Let's just go inside. We'll talk about it. All of it." The wind howled in response, a dark symphony that played at the edges of my mind. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, and I could have sworn I saw ghostly figures flitting between the trees, their secrets entwined with the rustling leaves. Ryan scoffed, a nervous laugh breaking the tension. "What's the worst that could happen? Turning into a wolf? Killing our neighbors?" But even as he said it, I could see the chill creeping into his bones, a subtle shiver that betrayed his bravado. I remember the stories my grandmother told me as a child, her voice a soothing balm against the harsh realities of life. "The moon calls to us," she'd say, her eyes glinting with wisdom and mischief. "It pulls at our hearts, our minds." I had thought it was just her way of sharing the myths of our ancestors, but standing there, beneath that haunting light, I felt every word of her stories wrap around me like a shroud. The tension thickened, a tangible fabric woven from fear and unresolved conflicts, stretching taut between us. Sarah's eyes darted to the moon, then to Ryan, as if searching for an answer in their depths. What if there's something to it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, a crack forming in her veneer of skepticism. Ryan shook his head, a faint smirk on his lips, but I could see the tremor in his hands. "It's just a rock in the sky," he insisted, but his words felt hollow, echoing like a spectre in the night. The air crackled with unspoken fears, the kind that burrowed deep within, shadowing our every thought. The weather turned, wind whipping around us, a storm brewing in the distance. I felt the weight of the moment, fragile and raw, like glass hovering on the brink of shattering. I could sense something changing, a shift in the very fabric of our reality as the moon hung above, a silent witness to our unraveling. I remember shouting over the wind, "Is it really just a coincidence? A simple rock? Or is it something far more powerful?" My heart raced, each beat a drum calling to the truth we all feared. The thunder roared in response, a dark laughter echoing through the night. And then, in that electric moment, the storm broke. Rain poured down, cold and cleansing, mingling with the heat of our emotions. The moon, veiled now, became a mere memory, a forgotten guardian of the night. We stood there, drenched and trembling, lost and found within the chaos of our own doubts. The myths surrounded us, whispering their timeless truths, questions lingering in the air like the rain itself. Were we merely vessels of our own fears, puppets dancing to the tune of an indifferent cosmos? Or could we confront the shadows lurking in our hearts, the hidden madness that simmered just beneath the surface? I felt the weight of Sarah's gaze upon me, the unuttered words hanging between us, begging to be set free. Ryan's skepticism faltered in the face of our shared vulnerability, and the storm raged on, relentless and unforgiving. The night swirled around us, a cyclone of emotion and myth, and I knew we were on the precipice of something larger than ourselves, something visceral, something that could never be dismissed as mere folklore. The moon would rise again, and with it, the echoes of our fears would return, relentless as the tides. And as we stood in that tempest, I understood we were all intertwined with the myths that shaped us, whether we believed in them or not. The search for truth, our truth, had only just begun. The moon hung low, a silver spectre draped across the bruised sky, its light penetrating the shadows of a quiet town steeped in secrets and isolation. I remember the silence before the storm, a silence that screamed. The air was thick with unspoken words, the kind that can choke you if you breathe too deeply. I stood on the edge of the rooftop, my heart a drumbeat of fear and resolve, staring into the abyss of the night, where hope flickered dimly, like a moth caught in a spider's web. Below me, Jenna paced, her footsteps echoing like the ticking of a clock, each tick a reminder of the time we could never reclaim. I could see the tension coiled in her shoulders, a taut string ready to snap. Her breath came in ragged gasps, mingling with the cool night air, and I could almost hear the ghosts of her thoughts whispering to her, taunting her, as they always did. I remembered her laughter, bright and infectious, but tonight it felt like a distant memory, buried beneath layers of anxiety and despair. "Why won't you talk to me?" she shouted, her voice breaking through the stillness, shattering the fragile peace of the night. It was a plea wrapped in desperation, a cry for connection amidst the chaos. I felt the weight of her words pressing against my chest, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I wanted to reach out, to pull her back from the edge of the abyss that seemed to beckon her, but my own demons loomed large, their shadows dancing beneath the moonlight. I turned my gaze to the heavens, searching for answers among the stars, those ancient balls of gas that had witnessed humanity's follies for eons. I felt small, insignificant, yet oddly connected to the cosmos. Each star a flicker of hope, the whisper of promise. I remember when we used to dream, I whispered, my words swallowed by the night. What happened to us, Jenna? In moments of clarity, I could almost see her, in her youth, radiating confidence and warmth. But that version of her felt like a ghost now, haunting the corners of my memory. I remember the nights we'd lie under the stars, our dreams spilling out like stardust, vibrant and uncontainable. But dreams had faded, crushed beneath the weight of reality. The moon was our witness, a constant reminder of our fragility. And then there was Tom, lurking in the shadows. He was my anchor, my friend, yet even he felt like a stranger at times. I could see the flicker of pain in his eyes, a reflection of my own turmoil. He stood at the edge of the rooftop, hands shoved deep into his pockets, his posture rigid as if he were bracing against an unseen storm. "This isn't you, Jenna. You can't let it win," he urged, his voice steady, laced with an intensity that made my heart race. But Jenna was lost, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. "You don't understand," she screamed, as if the words could cut through the heaviness that clung to her like a shroud. "I'm drowning. I can't breathe." The moon cast a ghostly pallor over her face, illuminating the tears that streaked her cheeks, glistening like shattered glass. Each tear a testament to her battles fought in silence, battles that had stripped her of her joy, her essence. With every heartbeat, the tension escalated. I could feel it in my bones, a palpable force that threatened to swallow us whole. We were tangled in a web of emotional chaos, each of us fighting our own wars while desperately trying to hold on to one another. "Please," I implored, my voice breaking. "Let me in. Let us help you." But the walls Jenna had built around herself were high and thick, a fortress forged in fear and loneliness. "You don't know what it's like," she sobbed, her voice a haunting melody that echoed in the stillness. I could sense the weight of her despair pressing down on her, like a heavy blanket suffocating the light. I remember the moon, luminous and cruel, watching as we spiraled into the depths of our anguish. It was a silent observer, indifferent to our suffering, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it understood. It had seen countless souls grapple with their shadows, countless hearts break beneath the weight of despair. I felt a fracture within me, a longing to reach across that chasm and pull her into the light. "Jenna, look at me," I urged, my heart racing, the stakes rising with every word. "You're not alone. I'm here. Tom is here. We're fighting for you." The night thickened, the air electric with tension, the world around us fading into a blur of darkness and desperation. In that moment, everything slowed. Time stretched, each second a lifetime. I could hear the pulse of the moonlight, a soft thrum that resonated with the chaos within us. I could feel the universe holding its breath, waiting to see if we would break apart or come together. And just then, a flicker of vulnerability crossed Jenna's face, a crack in her armor. "I don't want to fight anymore," she whispered, the admission a fragile thread that hung between us. I felt my breath catch in my throat, the enormity of her confession crashing over me like a tidal wave. It was a moment suspended in time, raw and unfiltered, the kind that could change everything. I reached out, my hand trembling, a bridge across our chasms of despair. The moon bore witness, a silent guardian illuminating our wounds and our hopes, reminding us that even in the darkest hours, light could seep through the cracks. "You don't have to fight alone," I said, my voice steadying, a lifeline in the storm. But before words could form, the storm broke, an eruption of raw emotion that cascaded over us like thunder. The night trembled, the moonlight flickering, casting shadows that danced with our fears. We were three souls, intertwined in our struggles, caught in the grip of something greater than ourselves, a cosmic force that demanded we confront our truths. The moon looked down, indifferent yet ever watchful, as we spiraled deeper into our entanglements, the night stretching on, an unbroken loop of pain and potential, a dance of darkness and light. And in that swirling chaos, as I held Jenna's gaze, I knew we were on the precipice of something monumental. The moon was our witness, but it was up to us to decide whether we would rise from the ashes or succumb to the shadows. The battle raged on, and I could feel the echoes of our hearts reverberating against the vastness of the cosmos, a reminder that we were all connected, all fighting our own wars beneath the same indifferent sky. A piercing scream shatters the stillness of the night. It slices through the darkness, raw and unfiltered, reverberating against the crumbling walls of a forgotten apartment. The moon, swollen and sinister, hangs low in the sky, casting an unholy glow through the window. Shadows twist and dance, filled with whispers of madness, echoing the chaos within. A figure trembles in the corner, clutching their hair, nails digging into the scalp as if trying to claw sanity back from the abyss. I remember the night Sarah lost her grip. Her laughter, once a melody, now twisted into something jagged and haunting. "It's the moon," she shrieked, eyes wild, glistening in the ghostly light. "It knows. It's always watching." The walls felt as if they were closing in, suffocating her, but they weren't the only ones watching. I stood frozen, heart hammering, a witness to her descent, the air thick with the scent of desperation and fear. How did we get here? What darkness lurked beneath the surface of our lives, waiting for this very moment to break free? It wasn't just the moon that haunted us. It was the weight of our own secrets, the shadows of our pasts, looming larger than life. I remember Tom, my brother, my tether to reality, who paced the room, hands trembling, breath hitching in his throat. "We can't let it take her," he gasped, but even as he spoke, I saw the doubt flicker in his eyes. The moon's light seemed to penetrate his very soul, revealing vulnerabilities he kept buried beneath bravado. "Lunacy," I whispered, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. I pictured the ancients, how they linked the moon with madness, how timeless fear wove itself into our understanding of the cosmos. They called it lunacy, a term rooted in lunar cycles, where the moon's pull could twist the mind into chaos. I felt it then, that connection, a thread taut between us, the weight of centuries pressing down on our shoulders, as if the moon conspired with our darkest fears. I remember, how could I forget, the nights when Sarah would stare out at the moon, entranced, as if it spoke to her. The way her voice would drop to a whisper, "Do you hear it?" she'd ask, eyes glazed and distant. "It tells me things," and I would nod, feigning understanding, but inside, I was a tempest. What was she hearing? What secrets did that celestial body hold? The moon was a mirror, reflecting our deepest fears, amplifying our neuroses. It was both beacon and bane, a silver sentinel within an abyss. Something in the air thickened, an unnameable tension, crackling like static. Tom stopped pacing. It was as if the moon had cast a spell, drawing him closer to its luminous pull. "Sarah," he said softly, desperation threading through his voice. "We're here for you." Those words hung there, fragile and trembling, as if the very act of speaking them could shatter the fragile thread binding reality. But Sarah thrashed, a wounded animal caught in the throes of a nightmare. "No. It's too late," she screamed. "It's already inside me." Her words echoed off the walls like the howling wind, a chilling chorus that sent shivers down my spine. I felt the darkness wrap around us, an insidious fog creeping into our hearts, twisting thoughts into grotesque shapes. I remember the stories, the lunatics of old, chained beneath the moonlight, howling at its brilliance as if it were a god. I felt their pain radiating through time, the echoes of their insanity intertwining with Sarah's cries, a symphony of heartache. Time warped as I realized we were no different. The moon had a way of unearthing buried truths, of laying bare the fractures within our souls. It was a relentless force, and we were mere mortals, powerless against its pull. "You don't understand." Sarah's voice shattered like glass, jagged and cutting. "It wants me to reveal things that can't be spoken. It knows what we've done." Her words clawed at my mind, each syllable a knife twisted deeper into my gut. The air crackled with the weight of unconfessed sins, guilt hung like a noose, ready to tighten around our throats. I looked at Tom, his face a mask of terror and concern. The moon's glow painted him in shades of grey, deepening the shadows beneath his eyes. I could see the guilt reflected there, too, the unspoken rift between us, the unhealed wounds from our childhood that bubbled to the surface under the lunar gaze. "We've all got demons, Sarah," I urged, my voice trembling. "But we can face them together." For a moment, silence enveloped us, thick and suffocating. Then, as if the very essence of the moon stirred the air, Sarah's laughter erupted, hollow, echoing madness that resonated with every crack in her mind. Together, she cackled, a sound that sent shivers racing down my spine. "You think this is about togetherness?" No, this is about the truth, and the truth is ugly." The moon hung like a taunting smile in the darkness, shedding light on the hidden horrors we kept locked away. I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, and the crushing weight of fear and helplessness settled in my chest. The shadows of our past loomed, and I realized there was no hiding from them, not under this cursed luminescence. And just like that, our confrontation spiraled. Tom lunged toward her, desperation igniting a fire within. "You can fight it, Sarah. We're stronger than this." His voice was a lifeline, but as she recoiled, I saw her slip further into the void, the moonlight revealing her inner turmoil, a tapestry of guilt, pain, and longing woven into her very being. I remember the moment everything shifted, the shadows grew longer, the air thicker, and the moon pulsed with an otherworldly intensity, as if it were alive, feeding off our fear. The room began to spin, emotions twisting into a frenzy. I could almost hear the whispers of the past beckoning us closer to the edge, daring us to leap into the unknown. Desperation clawed at my throat. "Sarah, please. Don't let it win." I reached out, hands trembling, feeling the cold tendrils of darkness brush against my skin. But the moon watched, indifferent and cold, illuminating the horrific truth: sometimes, the greatest battles are fought within, and those can be the most merciless of all. I could feel it, the air thick with tension, with unresolved pain and hidden truths. The moon was no mere celestial body, it was a mirror reflecting our deepest fears, illuminating the dark corners of our minds. As Sarah writhed, Tom's voice was a distant echo, and I stood at the precipice, heart racing, knowing the truth: our lives were tied to the phases of the moon, illuminating the lines between sanity and insanity, light and shadow, hope and despair. The scream echoed once more, but this time, it was swallowed by the night. The moon watched, a silent witness to our unraveling, as I realized, lunacy was not just a condition, It was a state of being, a dance with the cosmos that threaded through our very existence, an unending cycle of darkness and light, where every whisper of madness was only a heartbeat away. The moon hung like a watchful eye in the night sky, casting a ghostly pallor over the desolate village. Shadows danced in the flickering light of torches, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, fear. Agatha stood in the town square, her heart pounding like a war drum, each thud echoing the whispered tales of the villagers. "The moon is cursed," they said. "It brings madness." She could feel the weight of their gazes, heavy with skepticism and dread, but Agatha clung to her sanity like a lifebuoy in turbulent waters. But just as the moon was a constant companion, so too was the illness that plagued her. It began as a mere twitch in her fingertips, a quirk of stress that spiraled into something monstrous. The nights became her enemy, filled with nightmares of a cold, skeletal hand reaching from the shadows, pulling her into an abyss of despair. I remember, she thought, her mind slipping to a time before the plague of darkness. A time when laughter filled the air, not the hollow echo of her own breath. Then there was Thomas, a stubborn soul with eyes like storm clouds, wrestling with his own demons. He had seen too much in his brief years, had watched as friends succumb to the moon's allure, their laughter turning to screams, their dreams shattered like glass beneath a heavy boot. "It's the moon's fault," he insisted, pacing the cobblestone paths as if they were the veins of some great beast. "It's calling them." But what truly haunted him was his sister, Eliza, lost to the moon, her spirit now a flickering flame in the darkness. He felt the void where she used to be, an aching absence that gnawed at his insides. Agatha and Thomas's paths crossed like two comets destined to collide. In the dim light of a tavern, their fears laid bare between them, a magnetic tension crackling in the stale air. "I see her in my dreams," Thomas confessed, the tremor in his voice betraying him. "I can't let her go." Agatha nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. They were woven from the same cloth, both marked by loss, tethered to a reality twisted by the moon's sinister influence. As the nights grew longer, the village's collective madness intensified, a cacophony of desperate whispers spiraling into the ether. I remember, they chanted, their eyes glazed over, haunted by visions of shadows that whispered secrets of the cosmos. Agatha would often find herself standing beneath the moon, feeling its dispassionate gaze burning into her skin, a reminder of the lunacy that gripped them all. Eliza's absence loomed over Thomas like a spectre, a ghost tethered to his heart. He saw her everywhere, in every flicker of a candle, every gust of wind that rustled the leaves. "She calls to me," he murmured, his fingers trembling against the rough wood of the tavern table. "I can feel her." But with each passing night, the moon's pull deepened, and he felt himself teetering on the precipice of madness, like a marionette with strings tangled in despair. Agatha watched him unravel, the way he stared into the distance as if searching for something lost in the sky, a final connection to his sister, to hope, to sanity. "You need to let her go," she urged, but her voice trembled with the weight of her own fears. "I can't," he replied, his eyes darkened by the shadows of grief. "I refuse to abandon her." The moonlight bathed them in an ethereal glow, turning their pain into something surreal. In those moments, they were both broken and beautiful, two souls bound by sorrow, clinging to the fraying threads of their shared reality. But the moon was an insatiable beast, feeding off their despair, growing larger and more ominous with each passing night. And then, in the heart of the village, a chilling scream pierced the night. It was the sound of a soul lost to the moon, a warning echoing through the streets. People poured from their homes, drawn to the sound like moths to a flame, their faces a chaotic blend of horror and fascination. Agatha felt the dread wash over her, a wave of icy fingers gripping her heart. "Not again," she whispered, her breath hitching in her throat. Through the throng, Thomas fought his way to the center, his eyes wide with terror. "Eliza," he called, desperation lacing his voice. And there, in the flickering torchlight, his sister's figure emerged, translucent, ethereal, a haunting vision of what once was. She reached out, her mouth moving, but no words came. The crowd gasped, a collective breath held as if time itself had paused. Agatha's heart raced, the tension thickening around them like fog. "Thomas, don't," she screamed, but it was too late. He lunged forward, the moonlight illuminating his path, casting shadows that twisted and turned like serpents. In that moment, the air crackled with an energy that threatened to fracture reality itself. The villagers watched, suspended between hope and horror, as Thomas reached for Eliza, desperate to reclaim what he had lost. But the moon, that cruel sentinel, shone brighter, its light spilling over them like a tidal wave of madness. Agatha's scream blended into the cacophony, echoing through the night, a sound that would haunt her long after the moon had set. She could feel the walls closing in, the darkness creeping closer, a reminder of the battles fought and lost. "I remember. I remember," she repeated, a mantra against the encroaching shadows, as Thomas's silhouette blurred in her vision, swallowed whole by the abyss. And in that fleeting moment, the raw intensity of their pain fused with the moonlight, forging a bond that defied explanation. The village, the moon, the illness, they were all part of the same dark tapestry, woven together by threads of despair and longing. The moon would always rise, casting its eerie glow on the souls below, and Agatha knew that even as the night deepened, hope flickered like a candle in the distance, a fragile light against the encroaching darkness. But with every heartbeat, every breath, they stood on the edge of a precipice, the abyss waiting to swallow them whole. And as long as the moon watched, they would never be free. I remember, the clock ticks, each second echoing through the sterile hospital corridor, a rhythmic reminder that time is not just passing but throbbing, alive, heavy with foreboding. I can hear the distant wail of an ambulance, a siren piercing the night like a scream into the cosmos. Outside, the moon hangs, a luminous ghost in the sky, round and haunting, casting shadows across the pavement that seem to dance with the restless spirits of the lost. I remember Sarah, her breath ragged and raw, fighting the shadows that crept into her mind like thieves in the night. The way she clutched the sheets, eyes wide, searching for something, anything, to anchor her to reality. "I see them," she whispered, her voice trembling as if naming the ghosts would summon them closer. "They're here again." The voices. Panic rippled through her, an electric current that jolted the air. I could feel it, that fraying line between sanity and madness, the unsettling pull of the moon above, known for its propensity to twist the tide in both oceans and hearts. And there was Dr. Ellis, the stalwart physician, with his unwavering calm, though I glimpsed the flicker of dread behind his eyes. The moonlight caught his glasses at just the right angle, reflecting a glimmer of fear. I remember how he leaned in, steadying himself against the weight of the night. "Sarah, you're safe. You're in the hospital," he said, but even he couldn't quell the tempest swirling inside her. A shift, a breath, an unsteady heartbeat. I watched as she fought against her demons, clawing at the fabric of her reality, while the doctor scribbled notes, his pen moving furiously, a frantic dance of ink on paper. He referenced the full moon and its notorious reputation, an age-old belief that the lunar cycle could awaken madness in some, an echo of long-held fears. He'd written case studies before, the ones that speak of increased violence, erratic behavior, and the uncanny syncopation of human emotion with celestial bodies. But here, in this moment, it felt more visceral, alive, raw. "I remember my childhood," Sarah gasped, her eyes wide and wild. The full moon, it called to me. I could hear it whispering secrets, singing songs about sorrow and longing. Her voice trembled, a fragile string tugged tight. It was beautiful and terrifying, like love and loss intertwined. Each word dripped with nostalgia, a yearning that coiled itself around my heart. I could almost see the flicker of her memories, playful nights under a shimmering sky, the moonlight turning her laughter into silver, and yet, lurking in every beam, shadows that promise more than mere beauty. Tension coiled tighter as the doctor's brow furrowed deeper. "You're not alone, Sarah. You're with us," he insisted, but the moon loomed larger outside, its pale glow penetrating the gloom like an uninvited guest, a reminder of the unseen forces at play. The air thickened, palpable and suffocating, each breath a struggle as the night pressed in around us. I could feel the pulse of the cosmos, a beat that thumped in sync with the frantic pulse of her heart. Suddenly, a figure appeared, a nurse with an aura of quiet strength. Her name was Lisa, and she'd seen her share of lunacy. I remember the warmth in her eyes, a beacon in the chaotic night. "Sarah," she said softly, moving to her bedside. "Let's breathe together." There was a gentleness in her voice, a soothing balm against the jagged edges of fear. The nurse guided Sarah to inhale deeply, exhale slowly, a rhythmic mantra against the chaos. The moon's distant glow washed over us, a reminder that even in darkness, there was light to be found. But the moment shattered when Sarah snapped, her voice rising like a tempest. "You don't understand. They're here. They're coming for me." The frantic energy surged, filling the room with the weight of her despair, a soundless scream, echoing the stories of countless souls lost to the night. I could see the shadows lurking in the corners, swirling, beckoning, pulling at her sanity like the tide at the shore. Dr. Ellis, now caught in the whirlwind of her turmoil, stepped back, pen poised over paper, a witness to a battle that felt ancient and eternal. "Some believe the moon can bring out the worst in us," he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. "The madness, the sorrow, it's all intertwined with the celestial dance above. The old texts speak of it, how the mind can fracture under its gaze." His voice trailed off as he caught my eye, a shared understanding dawning between us. We were standing on the precipice of something beyond comprehension. And then, the room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken words. Sarah's eyes flickered, and for a moment, she seemed to drift away, lost in the depths of her own mind. I could see it in her gaze, the pull of memories, the weight of expectation, the relentless longing for peace. The moon hung heavy in the sky, a sentinel watching over our turmoil, an indifferent spectator to the chaos of human emotion. In those moments, I felt the world outside, the hum of the city, the buzz of life continuing beneath the vast expanse of the night sky. I remember the trees whispering secrets to the wind, the streets bathed in silver light, the quiet chaos of life, the mundane entangled with the cosmic. And I wondered, is there a connection? Are we simply marionettes dancing to the whims of a celestial conductor? The thought clawed at me, a question with no clear answer, just like Sarah's torment, which seemed woven into the very fabric of the universe. As Sarah's breath steadied, I dared to hope, but hope felt fragile, like a wisp of smoke in the cool night air. The moon, unyielding, watched over us, a reminder that life, and all its complexities, never truly rests. The tension lingered, a taut string waiting to snap, an unending cycle fueled by the celestial dance above. The whispers of the past and the shadows of the present swirled around us, leaving us tethered to the moment, caught between the light and the dark. And in that room, under the watchful gaze of the moon, we stood as witnesses to a cosmic truth too deep to fathom, yet too intimate to ignore. Each heartbeat echoed the unresolved stories of those who had come before us, and those who would follow, a haunting melody that would never truly fade. The moon hung low in the sky, a ghostly white eye watching over a restless city. I stood at the church's threshold, the cool stone pressing against my back, the scent of damp earth mingling with something sharper, fear. A bell tolled, heavy and somber, echoing through the narrow streets as if announcing the end of time. I could feel it in the marrow of my bones, the weight of 1,000 prayers choking the air, lingering like fog on a winter's night. My heart raced, caught between the pulsating rhythm of devotion and the gnawing dread that clawed at my insides. Father William's voice cut through the stillness, trembling with a fervor that sent shivers down my spine. "The moon is a harbinger, a reminder of our insignificance," he preached, his voice rising, swelling like a storm. "Look upon its pale face, and remember, God's judgment waits in the shadows." I glanced at him, his eyes wild, glinting with an unsettling mix of conviction and desperation. He was a man torn between faith and fear, grappling with the whispers of the cosmos that haunted him, trapped in a struggle as eternal as the stars. Sister Agnes stood beside him, her hands clasped tightly in prayer, knuckles white with tension. She had always been the epitome of serenity, but tonight, her composure cracked like fragile glass. "We must prepare," she urged, a tremor threading through her words. "The signs are all around us. The sky has shifted." She pointed to the moon, its craters resembling dark wounds, as if the heavens themselves bled from some ancient sin. I remembered the stories, the legends whispered in hushed tones by the flickering candlelight. They said the moon was a mirror to the soul, a portal to the unknown. Each phase a heartbeat, each shadow a secret. It was said that under its glow, you could see the truth of your heart, and it terrified me. I had my own secrets, buried deep, like roots twisting beneath the earth. "Do you feel it?" I whispered to Agnes, my voice barely a breath. The weight of it? Like 1,000 eyes watching. She nodded, a single tear cascading down her cheek, shimmering like a lost star. It knows our sins, our desires, she murmured, her gaze fixed on the moon as if it held the answers to her soul's darkest questions. We're but shadows in its light, and shadows can disappear. Father William's voice rose again, the urgency of a prophet in the throes of revelation. We must confront the darkness. The moon calls to us, demands our attention. The church cannot ignore it. He stepped closer, his hands outstretched, desperate to grasp something intangible, something that slipped through his fingers like grains of sand. The world is changing, and we must decide, will we seek redemption, or fall into despair? The tension thickened, wrapping around us like a noose. I could feel my heart thundering, drowning out his words. The church's walls bore witness to centuries of belief, yet tonight, doubt seeped through the cracks. I remembered the faces of those who had come before us, lost souls seeking solace beneath this very roof, their hopes woven into the tapestry of time. What did they know of the moon's power? What truths had they buried beneath their prayers? Suddenly, the ground trembled, a low rumble that resonated through the stones beneath our feet. A shiver danced up my spine. The moon seemed to shift, its light flickering like a dying flame, casting eerie shadows that twisted and writhed in the dark corners of the church. I felt the grip of fear tighten around my throat. Are we alone? I gasped, my voice cracking. Is it watching us? What if it's waiting? Father William turned to me, eyes blazing with fervor. It is not the moon we fear, but what dwells in our hearts. Our doubts, our sins. The cosmic forces are mere reflections of what we hide. And there it was, the truth, raw and unfiltered. The moon had become a symbol of everything we were too afraid to face. I could see it in Agnes's eyes, the fear of her own failings, of the darkness that lurked within. I felt it in myself, too, a swirling storm of desires unfulfilled, dreams cast aside. A vision flickered through my mind, a memory of a time when the moon was a friend, guiding lovers under its silvery embrace. I remembered the nights filled with laughter and whispered promises, the warmth of another's hand in mine. But now, the moon felt like a judge, cold and unyielding, shining light on all that had crumbled beneath the weight of our choices. Father, I whispered, my voice barely a whisper, can we escape it? Can we find our way back? He turned to me, his expression shifting, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through the armor of faith. Redemption is a journey, not a destination. And like the moon, we must face our cycles, our waxing and waning, our light and dark. Agnes moved closer, searching my eyes, her own glistening with unshed tears. We're not alone in this, are we? She murmured, her voice a fragile thread weaving through the darkness. We have each other. Together, we can confront the shadows. And in that moment, amidst the chaos and uncertainty, something stirred within me, a flicker of hope laced with the fear of what lay ahead. The moon shone bright, casting its glow upon us, a silent witness to our struggles, our joys, our pain. It was a reminder that every heartbeat echoed through the universe, connecting us all in a cosmic dance of light and shadow. I took a breath, steadying myself against the weight of it all. We stood on the precipice, teetering between despair and hope, the moon our constant companion in the night. Would we find the courage to face what lay ahead? The church trembled, the air thick with the weight of our fears, as the moon loomed ever closer, drawing us into its haunting embrace, a calling, a challenge, a reckoning. We could either cower in shadows or rise to meet the light. And as the bell tolled again, a chilling reminder of mortality and grace, I felt the universe hold its breath, waiting for our next move, a dance between the sacred and the damned. The moon hung low, a silver spectre in the shroud of a foggy night, draping the village in melancholy whispers. I stood on the cracked cobblestones, breath frozen in the air, an eerie chill curling around my spine like the fingers of a long-forgotten ghost. The church bells tolled ominously, the sound reverberating through the empty streets, a heartbeat echoing through the silence. It was a night when fear clung to the skin, when shadows danced in the corners of the mind, and the weight of ecclesiastical authority pressed down like an iron shackle. I remember the moment vividly, as if a time-worn photograph had come to life. Agnes, the village healer, her hand stained with the essence of herbs and remedies, frantically paced before me. Her eyes, wide and wild, darted toward the sky, where the pale orb of the moon glinted like a celestial eye, watching, judging. "They say the moon's curse is upon us," she gasped, words spilling from her lips like a waterfall, frantic and unrestrained. "The church, they believe it's the source of illness, of madness. And yet, I see the truth in the stars. We mustn't fear what we don't understand." I clenched my fists, torn between the raw desperation in her voice and the creeping dread that gnawed at my insides. Was she right? Could something so distant, so ethereal control the fate of our bodies and minds? The air thickened with tension, the stars above flickering as if they too shared in our plight, mocking our smallness. I wanted to scream, to break the spellbinding silence that hung heavy around us, but the fear of the church's judgment loomed larger. Hector, the blacksmith, shuffled closer, a figure of strength now reduced to shadows. His hands, calloused and strong, trembled as he spoke. "Agnes, you tread a dangerous path. The ecclesiastics will not take kindly to your heretical notions. They believe the moon's influence is the devil's work, a sign that divine retribution is upon us. They will burn you at the stake without a second thought." The words hung in the air like a noose, tightening around my throat. I felt the heat of the flames licking at my skin, the acrid smoke filling my lungs as they dragged me toward the pyre. I could almost smell it, the burnt flesh, the singed hair, the crackle of bones. I shuddered, my heart thrumming a frantic rhythm. The very fabric of our existence was woven into the delicate threads of the moon's silver light, and yet, darkness hung over us, precipitating our doom. "I remember," Agnes whispered, her voice trembling yet fierce, "the way the moon once guided our ancestors, how it was revered as a source of wisdom. We used its cycles to plant, to heal, to understand the world around us. Now, they twist its power into something vile. They shroud our knowledge in fear, cloaked in their dogma." Her words ignited something deep within me, a spark that flickered in the gloom. I felt the earth shift beneath me as memories surged forth. I recalled the tales told by the firelight, stories of women like Agnes who danced beneath the moon, gathering herbs under its watchful gaze, their laughter ringing through the night like chimes in the wind. They were healers, wise and fearless. But now, they were hunted. A movement in the shadows caught my eye, a figure lurking just beyond the lantern's glow. The priest, cloaked in robes heavier than sin, approached silently, eyes ablaze with zealotry. "The moon is a harbinger of chaos," he intoned, each word edged with authority. "You, Agnes, speak against the will of God. The church has decreed that all who defy his word will be cast aside, will be punished. You risk not just your life, but the souls of all who are led astray by your madness." His presence was a tsunami crashing against the fragile shores of our resolve. I felt the weight of his condemnation, like iron chains wrapping tightly around my chest. But Agnes stood her ground, defiance etched in the lines of her face. "I am not mad. I seek truth. The moon, with its phases, is a cycle of healing, of growth. You speak of punishment, yet it is the church that punishes knowledge, that binds us to fear." A silence fell, the air electric with unspoken consequences. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown to calamity, a clock ticking ominously in the dark. I could feel the tension coiling tighter, an invisible thread stretched to its breaking point. "Enough," bellowed the priest, his voice thunderous, shaking the very ground. "Your heresy will not stand. The moon is a symbol of the devil's machinations. Disease is a punishment for sin. I will not let you spread your poison any longer." The word struck like a whip, slicing through the air with sharp precision. I watched as Agnes, usually so resolute, faltered, a flicker of fear in her eyes. It was as if the moon itself had turned its back on her, plunging her into shadow. My heart twisted. I wanted to cry out, to defend her, to shake off the shackles of fear that paralyzed my tongue. But then there was Hector, stepping forward, his voice low but filled with strength. "You cannot silence us. The truth will always find a way to breathe. We are not sheep to be herded into darkness. We will hold on to our beliefs, our understanding of the world, and the moon will guide us, no matter the wrath of the church. The tension snapped, a taut wire snapping back into place. The priest's eyes darkened, the threat of violence hovering in the air like an uninvited guest. The moon glinted above, casting a silvery light on our confrontation, a ghostly witness to our uprising. I could feel the cosmos swirling around us, time stretching and bending, and in that moment, something deep inside me ignited, a refusal to bow, to shrink beneath the weight of fear. The priest stepped back, caught off guard by the sudden swell of rebellion. I could see the uncertainty flickering in his eyes, and I felt the air shift, the balance teetering on the edge of chaos. The moon had witnessed countless battles, its craters a testament to the scars of history. What would it whisper to us tonight? What truths lay hidden in its luminous embrace? As I stood there, caught between the embers of defiance and the shadows of oppression, I knew one thing: the struggle between celestial knowledge and ecclesiastical authority was far from over. The night was just beginning, and the moon, our silent sentinel, would continue to watch, waiting for the moment when we would reclaim our understanding of the cosmos and heal our wounded souls. And so, the night stretched on, the tension crackling in the air, the moon shining brighter as if to challenge the very darkness that sought to consume us. A storm was brewing, a clash of beliefs imminent, and I felt it deep within, a pulse that sang of hope and defiance, ready to surge forward into the abyss. The night was alive, pulsating with a heartbeat that felt both ancient and fresh, the moon hanging low, a harbinger of stories untold. Its silvery light dripped through the branches, casting shadows that danced like whispers on the ground. I stood there, feeling the cool air wrap around me like a shroud, a soft brush against my skin. The moon was not just a celestial body, it was a mirror reflecting the chaos, the beauty, the madness in our hearts. Lila, just a few feet away, her eyes fixed on the moon, trembled with a desperation that seemed to suck the very breath from the air. "Look at it," she whispered, her voice laced with urgency, as if the moon itself was a living entity that could listen. "It's the same moon that watched over my ancestors. They believed it held the spirits of the lost." Her hands were trembling, fingers curling into fists, nails biting into flesh. The moon had become her anchor, a lifeline to a history she felt slipping through her fingers like sand. But there was something haunted in her gaze, something that tugged at my heart. It spoke of a burden, a lineage of sorrow. I stepped closer, the crunch of leaves underfoot breaking the silence, and the moment hung heavy, thick with shared pain and longing. "What are you afraid of?" I asked, my voice barely more than a breath. I didn't need to say more, she could feel the weight of my question, the way it hung like a storm cloud overhead. "I'm afraid of forgetting," she said, a tremor in her voice, raw and fragile. "Of losing the stories, the songs, everything that made us who we are." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, reflecting the moonlight as if it were a beacon of hope yet also a mirror of despair. And there I was, caught in the crossfire of her emotions, a solitary witness to a battle waged in the depths of her soul. The shadows around us tightened, the air thickening with unspoken words. I could sense the echoes of her ancestors, the distant wails of those who had come before, those who had looked up at the same moon, searching for answers, for solace. In that moment, I remembered my own struggles, my own lineage, a tapestry woven with threads of joy and heartbreak, of dreams dashed against the rocks of reality. And then there was Arjun, lurking in the periphery, his presence both grounding and unsettling. He had once stood before the moon with vigor and certainty, a warrior in his own right, but now he was a ghost of himself, haunted by memories too heavy to bear. I could see the way he wrestled with the shadows of his past, how they clung to him like a second skin. The moon was his enemy and ally, a double-edged sword that sliced through the facade he wore like armor. "Do you think they're watching us?" Arjun's voice broke the silence, low and gravelly, filled with a longing that reached for the stars. He was searching for connection, for validation in the vast emptiness of the universe. "All those who came before us, do you think they're up there, looking down, hoping we remember?" There was a fragility in his question, a silence that screamed for a reply, for something to tether him to the fabric of existence. I glanced at Lila, her tears now spilling over, glistening like the moonlight on water. "They must be," I replied, feeling the weight of their expectations, their hopes. "But we have to carry their stories, their burdens. We can't let them fade into the night. The words felt both liberating and suffocating, a promise and a curse. I could almost hear the whispers of those lost against the backdrop of the moon, urging us to remember, to hold steadfast. The moon pulsed above us, a cosmic heartbeat, the silent witness to our fears and dreams. And as the tension mounted, a stillness enveloped us, thick as fog, heavy as despair. I could feel the echoes of history crashing against the shores of our consciousness, the Incan moon goddess, Mama Aquila, who wept for the souls lost to the dark, the Japanese legends of Tsukuyomi, the moon god caught in a web of betrayal and anger, the ancient Greeks who saw Selene riding her chariot across the night sky, illuminating the darkness but never quite conquering it. Each myth, each tale, a fragment tethered to the fabric of who we are, shimmering in the moonlit night like crystals scattered across a vast expanse. Each story was a pulse, a rhythm of life intertwined with our existence, yet they felt suffocated beneath the weight of modernity, of a world that rushed by without looking back. Do you ever feel it? Lila's voice broke through my thoughts, raw and yearning. The pull of those stories? Like they're clawing at you, begging to be told. Her eyes were wide, seeking, filled with a fire that lit the night but also threatened to consume her. I can't shake them. Not anymore. The intensity of her gaze held me, demanding recognition of the truth buried deep within us all. I remember, I murmured as if echoing an ancient chant, the way the stories intertwined with the moonlight, how they shaped our dreams, our fears. I felt the weight of those memories, the threads of our past weaving through the fabric of the night, binding us together in an unbreakable bond. The moon hung above us, unwavering, a haunting reminder of the mysteries we chased and the shadows we fought. With every heartbeat, with every breath, a confrontation loomed on the horizon, a battle of wills against the ghosts of our heritage. The moon, with its timeless presence, awaited the moment we would finally embrace our stories, the darkness and the light, the pain and the joy. And in that moment, under the watchful gaze of the celestial sentinel, we stood on the precipice, teetering between the past and the present. The shadows morphed into something more, into ancestors, into the weight of our lineage, the collective sigh of humanity. The moon was not just a distant orb, it was the very essence of who we were. As the night deepened, the air thick with tension and unspoken words, I knew the confrontation was inevitable. We would either succumb to the darkness or emerge transformed, empowered by the stories that called to us from beyond the veil. The moon glimmered, a silent witness to our struggle, reminding us that in the heart of every shadow, there is light waiting to be found. The night shattered with the howls of a child, a voice raw and frayed, splintering the air like glass. I stood frozen, the moon a ruthless overseer, glaring down through a veil of clouds, its cold light spilling onto the dirt-streaked street. Shadows lurked, twisting in the corners like forgotten memories, whispering secrets of ancient civilizations far removed but hauntingly close. I remember the chill that gripped my spine as I stumbled toward the source of that wail. It was a sick child, eyes wide with fever, trembling as the world around him darkened with night's embrace. His mother, a frail figure in threadbare clothes, held him tight, but her grip was futile against the invisible weight pressing down on them. The moon, that ancient sentinel, was a beacon of both hope and dread, a witness to their plight, its surface riddled with the lore of those who had come before. "Help him," she cried, desperation clawing at her throat, each syllable steeped in the weight of 1,000 nights where the moon had cast its pallid glow over the suffering of humanity. I felt the pull of her fear, the gravity of health and despair entwining like the roots of an old tree, gnarled and tangled in the soil of civilizations past. I remember the chill of autumn nights spent in dusty libraries, poring over the beliefs of those long gone. Babylonians gazed at the moon, mapping its phases, believing it held the power to dictate fate, health, and harvest. The lunar cycle, they thought, was a cosmic heartbeat, thumping rhythmically through the fabric of existence. They treated ailments with the tinctures of the moon, letting its shadows guide their hands. "Let the moon wax, let the sickness wane," they would chant, their eyes reflecting the glimmer of hope that hung in the air like mist. But with every healing ritual, there were shadows of fear. I could see them in the eyes of the mother cradling her child. The ancient Romans, too, saw the moon as a harbinger. Lurking in their minds was the belief that lunacy, the madness that could grip the mind, was a consequence of the moon's sinister gaze. They knew the story of the wolf, the beast that prowled under the lunar glow, a reminder that health and hysteria dance dangerously close, a delicate tango that could spiral into chaos. How easily one could lose themselves under the watchful eye of that glowing orb. The child's breath came in shallow gasps, and I could feel the weight of time pressing against my chest, an invisible clock ticking down to a moment that felt inevitable. I could almost hear the echoes of past civilizations, Aztecs, who believed that the moon was a deity, a goddess who could heal but also curse. Their priests would whisper incantations, offering blood as tribute, believing that health was a price steeped in sacrifice. What would that mother give now, in the dim light of despair, to see her child bloom again like the flowers of spring? I remember the echoes of my own laughter, the absurdity of it all, standing in a world so tethered to the heavens, so influenced by celestial whims. The ancient Greeks would blame the moon for arousing madness, chuckling among themselves as they watched the afflicted wander, eyes glazed over, entranced by the pull of the tides. "He's gone lunatic," they'd laugh, the macabre humor a thin veil over their own fears. They believed the lunar cycles influence not just the oceans, but the very essence of health and madness, a cosmic joke that left them questioning their own sanity. And now, here in this moment, the child's eyes flickered with recognition, as if aware of the cosmic connection. I felt myself root deeper into the earth, feeling the pulse of history beneath me, 1,000 voices crying out for understanding. "Please," I whispered, a silent plea to the moon above, "let her child breathe again." But the moon, indifferent yet omnipresent, cast its glow without judgment, without compassion. It remained a constant, a reminder that health was never a guarantee, that life teetered on the edge of shadow and light. I watched as the mother rocked her child back and forth, her breath hitching in her throat with every ragged inhale, the rhythm akin to the moon's own cycles, and I felt the weight of her hope shatter like porcelain. Then came the shimmering moment, a flicker of movement, a gust of ancient wisdom. In the depths of her despair, she whispered a name, the name of a healer long forgotten, a ghost of a time when people looked to the moon for answers, believing it would grant them the keys to life. I felt the resonance of her words, the sacredness of her invocation echoing through the ages, a thread connecting us to those who had come before. In that silence, time seemed to stretch, each heartbeat a drum. The moon hovered, a sentinel of the night, revealing the delicate thread of fate that wove our lives with the cosmos. I was lost in that moment, caught between the weight of history and the fragility of health. The air thickened, charged with something electric, something raw. I could almost see the shadows of the ancient swirling around us, specters of hope and fear entwined, their beliefs lingering, whispering secrets that thrummed in the air. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the night shifted. The child gasped, his eyes wide, staring into the abyss of the sky. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Hope flickered, a star against the blackness, a potential lifeline, a connection to all the civilizations that had gazed upon the moon and dared to dream of health, of healing, of salvation. In that moment, I remembered. I remembered the Romans, the Greeks, the Babylonians, and all the countless others who had looked to the heavens with eyes filled with longing and fear. I remembered the weight of their beliefs, the power of their rituals, the intimacy of their desperation. And I felt the moon's gaze, unforgiving yet illuminating, stare down upon us all. The stars twinkled like distant memories, and I realized the truth, beneath that celestial body, we were all the same. Each of us a flicker of life, a momentary dance on the stage of existence, haunted by health and the ever-elusive promise of the night. The child's breath steadied. Was it the moon's whisper? Or perhaps the ghosts of those who had come before, weaving their magic into the fabric of this moment? Health, madness, hope, every thread intertwined like the roots of an ancient tree. As the night deepened, the shadows lengthened, and I knew in my heart that this tale would never end. The moon would continue to watch, to guide, to haunt, binding us in the eternal struggle between light and darkness, life and death, hope and despair. The air crackled with an unspeakable tension as the clock struck midnight, its chime echoing into the vast, shadowy corners of the old hospital. I stood there, my heart racing, a tremor in my hands as I clutched the crinkled paper that held her fate. Just hours ago, my mother lay nameless and faceless, yet now she was the sum of all my fears, an amalgamation of the cosmos, a celestial body in a fight against the gravitational pull of destiny. Across the flickering fluorescent lights, Dr. Ilara Finch stood, her brow furrowed, eyes darting between the chart and the window that framed an endless expanse of stars. She was caught in the crossfire of her scientific convictions and her spiritual longings. A brilliant oncologist, she wielded her knowledge like a sword, yet here she was, wrestling with the unfamiliar whispers of astrology that danced like fireflies around her structured existence. I remember, she muttered as if trying to summon courage from the depths of her memory, the night my mother was diagnosed. The stars felt heavy, like they were pressing down on me, warning me of what was to come. But what do stars know of our suffering? I thought bitterly, feeling the weight of the universe pressing on my chest. They are distant, cold entities, spinning in the void, indifferent to our cries. Yet, here we were, two women tethered by blood and fear, caught in the pull of something inexplicable. "Your mother's chart," she said softly. "It suggests this isn't just medical, a cosmic alignment is at play." The words hung heavy in the air, ripe with gravity. It felt absurd, a dance of science and superstition that made me laugh in desperation. "So, she's sick because Mercury is in retrograde." I spat, sarcasm the only shield I had against the encroaching despair. Dr. Finch's gaze met mine, a spark igniting between us. "It's more complicated than that," she replied, the tremor in her voice betraying her own doubts. "Astrology, medicine, they intersect. There are patterns, rhythms, cycles. What if there's a truth beyond what we see?" The shadows in the room deepened, swirling like the ink in my mother's blood. I remembered the stories she would tell on sleepless nights, the constellations woven into our family lore. A Leo, she would proclaim, as if that divine fire made her invulnerable. "You're my star, you know that," she'd wink, her laughter ringing like the tinkling of a distant bell. "But sometimes, stars fall, honey. Sometimes they burn out." And there I stood, paralyzed by grief and anger, caught between the realms of science and something much older, something primal. My mother's fate felt woven into the very fabric of the cosmos, yet I hated the idea that the universe had a hand in this, a cruel cosmic joke playing out in the dark. "Can we change it?" I asked, a desperate plea that echoed in the hollow chambers of the hospital corridor. "If the stars dictate her fate, can we fight back? Can we move them?" Dr. Finch hesitated, the weight of her gaze heavy against my soul. "The body is more than the stars, more than charts and alignments. We have the knowledge, but we also have faith, belief." Faith. The word felt like a shard of glass lodged deep in my throat. I watched as the doctor's hands trembled ever so slightly, her confidence cracking like dry earth beneath the summer sun. I felt that crack too, a fissure in my own resolve. What if this wasn't just a battle of medicine, but a clash of worlds? A siren wailed in the distance, echoing through the night, a haunting melody that seemed to respond to our internal chaos. I leaned closer to Dr. Finch, the air electric with the gravity of our shared uncertainty. What if we combine them? The science, the stars, what if they are meant to coexist? Her eyes widened, a flicker of hope igniting within. "You mean a program? A new approach? Where we acknowledge the cosmic influence while treating the physical?" "Yes." I felt alive, a burst of warmth pushing against the cold dread that had settled in my chest. "Let's create a space where both can exist. Where we can bring her hope, where we can wield the truth of both the cosmos and medicine." The doctor's lips curled into a tentative smile, igniting a small flame of belief within me. But just as quickly, the storm clouds of reality rolled back in. But what if it's too late? What if the stars have already decided? Panic clawed at my throat. I couldn't lose her. Not now, not ever. No. We can't think that way. My desperation spilled out, raw and unfiltered, a plea that echoed in the sterile air. I remember holding her hand, feeling her warmth, her pulse, a living testament against the coldness of fate. Outside, the night deepened, shadows stretching like fingers reaching for the light. The stars twinkled above, indifferent, yet I could almost hear their distant laughter mingling with my sorrow. "We need to act," I said, my voice steady now, born from the fierce urgency of a daughter's love. "Bring the charts, the medicines, the prayers and the hopes. Let's weave them together, no more binaries." No more walls. Dr. Finch nodded, determination igniting in her eyes. We will. Together. We will fight. As we turned toward the door, the clock's ticking faded into the background. Time itself felt suspended, every heartbeat a battle cry against the vastness of uncertainty. The air buzzed with potential, with the possibility of healing not just the body, but also the spirit, a confluence of science and belief, of reason and wonder. But the shadows loomed large, reminding me that the fight had only just begun. In the distance, the stars blinked, a reminder that they watched, that they listened, that they had their own role to play in our unfolding drama. And in that moment, as we stepped into the light of the unknown, I understood, the intersection of astronomy, astrology, and medicine was not just a convergence of knowledge, it was a sacred battleground where love and fear, science and spirit, collided. A place where fate was not a fixed point, but a delicate tapestry woven anew with every choice we made. The cosmos spun above, a cruel reminder of our smallness, our fragility, yet within that vastness, a flicker of rebellion ignited. We were not done fighting. Not yet. The clock strikes midnight, its chime echoing like a heartbeat in the stillness of the ancient observatory. I stand there, breath caught in my throat, eyes glued to the heavens. The stars twinkle above, mocking my very existence, their cold light piercing the darkness, as if they hold answers I desperately seek. I remember the way the sky felt that night, alive, throbbing with secrets, as if the cosmos were a living being, breathing alongside me. A shiver travels down my spine. I'm not alone, I can feel their presence, the ghosts of astronomers and astrologers, shadows of those who once dared to intertwine the stars with our fates. Marisol, a fervent astrologer, flits about the room like a moth to a flame. Her hands tremble, fingers stained with ink as she charts destinies that hang like fragile glass ornaments, teetering on the edge of belief. The alignments are wrong, she whispers, her voice barely a heartbeat above silence. The moon is rising in Scorpio. It's a time for transformation, but also danger. She glances at me, her eyes wide, pupils dilated, as if the weight of the universe rests upon her slender shoulders. I feel the pull of fear grip my heart. What does that mean for us? For the sick in the town, their lives hanging by a thread, bound to the whims of celestial bodies. Across the dimly lit room, Elias, an astronomer, hunches over his telescope, a haunted look etched into his furrowed brow. He chases the stars with a fervor that borders on madness, the kind that consumes and devours. It's all connected, he mutters, his voice thick with desperation. The cosmos dictates our health, the movement of planets, the ebb and flow of tides. A mere flicker of Saturn can mean the difference between life and death. I remember the last patient we lost, young Matteo, his breath soft and fragile, slipping through our fingers like sand. We were powerless, shackled by the very stars that guided us. The weight of grief hovers in the air, tangible as smoke. Marisol suddenly gasps, her fingers trembling above her astrological chart, as if she's touched a live wire. There's an eclipse coming, she breathes, her voice a mix of awe and terror. An omen. I can almost see the shadows swirl around her, dark and ominous. The air thickens, suffocating, as I recall the stories of old, the whispers of how eclipses have been heralds of misfortune, illness, and despair. What will the townsfolk think when the moon devours the sun? Will they blame us? The astronomer, the astrologer, do they see us as saviors or harbingers? Each tick of the clock pulls us deeper into a web of uncertainty, the tension crawling beneath my skin. Elias's fingers dance over the lenses of his telescope as he breathes in the universe's scent, cold, metallic, and deeply unsatisfying. We're close, Marisol. His eyes glint feverishly, a wild blend of hope and madness. We can use this to heal. The alignment will give us the power to draw the sickness from their bodies, to harness the stars for good. His voice rises, punctuated by a mania that makes me shiver. But I feel the fear gnawing at the edges of my mind. What if we're wrong? What if we're merely puppets, dancing to the tune of celestial bodies that care little for our struggles? With every moment, I'm thrust into memories of the sick, the suffering. I see the faces of those who begged us for salvation, their eyes sunken, hope flickering like a dying candle. I remember the desperation in their voices, the helplessness that wrapped around my heart like a vice. Each heartbeat reverberates with the dread of failure. The stars twinkle above, indifferent, as I wonder if they mock our earnestness, our faith in the unseen. Marisol, her spirit fraying at the edges, pushes back a stray lock of hair, her gaze piercing through me. We must be brave, Elias. We can't let fear bind us. I see the fire in her eyes, the unwavering belief that the cosmos can guide us, and yet, it feels like a fragile thread, ready to snap under the weight of reality. What if we're wrong? I whisper, fear lacing my words. What if the stars are indifferent to our plight? The clock's ticking grows louder, time slipping through our fingers like grains of sand. A storm brews outside, the wind howling as if nature itself is protesting our audacity. Shadows dance along the walls, twisting and contorting in an eerie ballet, whispering secrets I dare not comprehend. I can feel the weight of every decision pressing down on my chest, a suffocating reminder of our mortality. Marisol's voice breaks through the haze. We create our destiny, Elias. The stars are merely guides. Her conviction is a balm, soothing the raw edges of my fear, but doubt lingers in the recesses of my mind. Can we truly shape fate? Or are we mere players in a cosmic joke, puppets on strings beyond our control? The tension thickens, an unyielding force that binds us together, even as the darkness creeps in. I remember the stories, those macabre tales of the past, how the ancients believed in the healing power of the stars, how they charted the skies to cure the sick. But with every tale, I see the ghosts of the burned, the whispers of those who dared to challenge the natural order, only to be cast aside, forgotten. The weight of history presses against me, and I feel the world teetering on the brink of chaos. The storm rages on, the wind howling with fury, a mirror to our own turmoil. The stars blink above, an unyielding reminder that we are not alone, yet their cold light chills my bones. As the eclipse draws near, a sense of urgency wraps around us like a shroud. Every second counts, and the air is thick with unspoken words, unresolved emotions, and the unmistakable taste of dread that lingers like iron on my tongue. Marisol and Elias exchange glances, a silent understanding passing between them. Their fates intertwine, drawing me into their orbit, binding us together in this cosmic dance. We are all haunted by the same question: can we challenge the heavens? Can we stand against the darkness? The clock ticks on, relentless, echoing our collective heartbeat as we grasp for hope in the shadows. And yet, the stars shimmer above, indifferent yet beckoning, drawing us closer into their embrace, their celestial dance an eternal reminder that we are part of something greater, something unfathomable. The universe is vast, its secrets buried among the constellations, waiting to be unearthed. As the eclipse approaches, the tension mounts, a palpable energy that electrifies the air around us. We stand on the precipice of discovery and despair, hearts racing as we prepare to confront the unknown. In this moment, we are both astronomers and astrologers, healers and dreamers, seekers of truth amidst the chaos, our fates forever entwined with the cosmos that watches over us. The clock ticks, the storm roars, and I feel the weight of the universe pressing down on us, urging us to take that final step, into the light, or into the void. The line between hope and despair blurs, and we stand together, teetering on the edge of destiny, ready to embrace whatever comes next.